Believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? The Ripple Effect Podcast, 300th episode. We are live on YouTube, and we'll be having Patreon supporters, which you guys might know. I have this thing for my Patreon supporters where I do a podcast with them. We get to connect. We get to connect with one another and hang out. So I figured I'd save the next one for today's very special episode, the 300th episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. So if you want to be on the next Patreon podcast, definitely check us out. All the links will be in the show description, so check that out. I'm going to be letting in some fans now, so let's go. Let's see who's joining us. We got some people in the waiting room. And here we go. Ronnie, Smith, Matt. Matt wasn't kidding when he said he was going to be on every one of these. But we also have some friends of the show, people who have been with me or people I've been with throughout the years. What's up? Can you guys, everybody's here. We got some people joining us. What's up, guys?
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me good?
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I can hear you great.
Awesome.
I'm doing this from my car, so I didn't know how it was going to work out.
Yeah, well, we'll see how the connection is. And if by any chance you have any background noise or whatnot, then, you can mute just to kind of prevent that in the time being. But I was letting the listeners know, because I actually decided last second to live stream this. So I was letting the listeners know that what we're doing. One, it was the 300th episode. And then two, I gave a bunch of people to invite last night. I gave, just hit up a bunch of people that I'm friends with in the podcast community. I'm sure a lot of them who show up are going to be people that you guys know and people you've seen me interview multiple times on the show. So it'll be fun. It'll be like a hangout. We don't know who's going to show up or when they're going to show up. I told them, hey, we're going to be hanging out for like an hour, 2 hours. So just drop in anytime you can.
Burmis might drop by.
What's that?
I heard Burmis might drop by.
Yeah. Where'd you hear that? Did he announce it?
He said it earlier today.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Well, it was funny because Burmis was one of my first guests ever, and it was weird because he was big in the alternative media community for a while, and then he kind of disappeared for a while. He kind of did his own thing. I think he was managing a bar and in the restaurant business and whatnot, and then out of nowhere he he kind of just showed up, and I'm glad he did, because he has a energy and a passion for this stuff that, like, how he does as many videos as he does daily, it blows my mind.
Yeah, I found him last year, and then he started streaming the Union of the Unwanted, and then I found you and a bunch of other people, and just been down the hole ever since.
Yeah, that show is awesome. We got another one on the 8th, which will be Monday the 8th. Next week we're going to do another one. It will be live streamed on, it used to be live streamed on my channel, but now it's live streamed on the Union of the Unwanted YouTube channel. And actually Odyssey, which I have a page on there, the Ripple Effect Podcast, and so does the Union of the Unwanted. They just started live streaming now. They have that feature. So a lot of people, I know Dan Dix just did it like the first day that it was available. And so now I think that's going to be another spot you're going to start seeing a lot of people live stream, because that's been the one thing that people have kind of wanted. Like, where's that spot where I can get a little bit of everything? I can live stream, I can upload videos, and it looks good and it's clear. And it seems like now we have some options. Before it was just YouTube. Float, it's kind of cool too. You can live stream on there also. I know OBDM does that. Midnight Mike does that with his show. But it really D Live was another one. People were using Twitch, I think. Some people were using Twitch. I think
Well, a whole bunch of people on YouTube just got demonetized today. The Combo Couch, a couple other progressives, and I feel like at this point it's not even really about the censorship. It's almost about cutting off a person's livelihood. You know, their source of income. It's like they don't want anybody working on their own independently.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of like I've kind of been on the James Corbett kind of boat in regards to like I just never monetize on YouTube because I always felt like when you're talking about controversial issues, like eventually you're gonna run into some problems with dealing with YouTube. I mean, I'm on Patreon, obviously, as you guys know. I mean, Patreon I know has given some people a hard time, but I don't post my content there. Like I just kind of keep everybody updated on what's going on. So I don't know if that's kind of helped me. So I don't know, for the time being, it's for some reason I think I'm off the radar because a lot of people keep having issues. And actually when I uploaded the Mickey Willis podcast, for some reason I did get a couple of things flagged, but it was like weird old stuff that I'm like, why are you flagging this? Like they flagged one of my old music videos for one of my songs. Another fellow construction worker top but yeah, so it was weird that they flagged that, and I'm like, I have all these vaccine episodes and COVID episodes, and you don't even touch any of those, and you flag some weird music video. But James Corbett had the same issue. He was just on my show saying that I forgot what got flagged, but it was like some 5-year-old little podcast he did that he would have never guessed would have caused some issues. So it's weird how the algorithms work and if we figure them out or not. But they're way more advanced than I think we even know, because a lot of times I'm uploading stuff, even like on, I don't know if you guys have run into the same situation, but when you're on Instagram and you post, like I'll post a screenshot of a tweet of me talking about COVID or whatever it may be, and then it'll come up with that little thing on the bottom and it says, for more information on vaccines or COVID, click here. And I'm like, wait, this is a screenshot. I'm not actually typing anything, but apparently they're analyzing it. And
Yeah,
many
the channel is Slow News
Can
Day.
I just check? Is my mic fine? Do you
Yeah,
hear me, guys?
I can hear you.
Yeah, okay.
What time?
Uh,
What time is it there, Ronnie?
it's 2:07.
You want to let everybody know where you're where you're at?
Yeah, I'm from Finland. I took a day off tomorrow, paid leave. I have a beer here. I'm going to. This is for you. 300. Let's go.
Oh, I need to get where's my well, all I got is coffee, but I'm gonna have to get my wife to get me some bourbon or whiskey or something.
Yeah.
Wine and cigar.
Yeah, but I about the censorship. It's so funny because we have state-run media, and they get flagged when they put like COVID deaths. I get censorship on the below. Go visit THL. It's CDC, but the Finnish one, for more info. And I'm like, it's the state media. What the fuck, guys? So
Yeah.
they're censoring even the state. So I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, I wonder how in Finland I got a Gina. I wonder if that's my wife. There's no way she doesn't even listen to this show. It'd be nice if she listened to the 300th episode, I guess. But yeah, it's amazing how well, actually, I want to ask you this because you're in Finland. How much of what happens in the U.S. has a direct effect on Europe? Because it seems like that's the case. Like as US goes, everything follows. Like once we start cramping down on things, everybody else just kind of takes, just follows. We take the lead, they follow us. Is that what's going on now? Because now it seems like I'm gonna, hey, it's my kids and my wife.
We just want to say goodbye. Good luck, guys.
Thanks, guys.
I love you. I love you too.
Okay.
Tell me if a Wednesday will be on your podcast.
Yeah, I'll let you know if a wrestler's on my podcast. Yes.
Okay, then get me up. Then get me down here.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Love you, Dan.
Love you too.
Bye.
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 Sorry about that, guys.
Right.
So yeah, they're we are following like 2-3 weeks after you guys. When the mask started, our CDC told us our media asked them if we need to use them. And they just said maybe because it would represent that we have a virus. They actually said that. But like after 2 3 weeks, the popular media in all the countries talked about the masks, and we followed suit, and now we have them. I actually talked to my CEO last week. He said he will fire me if I don't start using them. So now I have to go around at my work with like a fucking plastic shield over my head. So it's better than the mask, so I guess.
But isn't it weird that that's acceptable? Like I've made this point multiple times on the show that it's not about science, it's about compliance, right? Because it's like they don't even care if the thing you're wearing as a mask it will actually stop the spread of anything. They just care that you're just following the rules. It's not about science anymore. It's about flexing their muscles and overreach of government and big pharma. I mean, they're a huge influence on what's going on. I mean, that's the thing. Like so much of this has become a anti-government thing, but a lot of this is being influenced by big pharma. So it's like they both get the blame. I mean, it's neither, this is kind of a recurring theme on my show. Like a lot of people know I'm a political atheist. I don't really have any political view that isn't subject to change, or I'm not open to challenge those ideas. And so often it's like if you had an opinion on anything during the whole lockdown, it was immediately like people were trying to figure out, well, like, what team are you on? Like, okay, if you have this opinion on this, it's because you're on that political team. It's like, no, I have this opinion because it makes logical sense. Like wearing a mask, you breathe heavy because you need more oxygen. I'm a huge fan of Wim Hof. I mean, he talks about all the incredible benefits and of more oxygen, deeper breaths, all that breathing. I mean, you can get the app on your phone, the Wim Hof app, and I used it before I played sports, and like my cardio would be better. It would help with soreness. I mean, he had studies that showed that it could even improve like the strength of your immune system. So all these things, all these benefits with what? Just breathing more oxygen. And now you're literally restricting people of more oxygen. And the crazy thing is that, like, when they talk about, oh, people do it at the hospitals, people do it at wherever, like, yeah, but during surgery, you're taking a clean mask that's in a box, you're putting it on your face, and soon after, does your dad want to be on the show? Is that your dad?
Oh yeah, man.
We can get
and all of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I like extracting some wisdom from the older guys. But yeah, I mean, it's wild. Like these masks are just, most of us, our masks are in our pocket. They're I leave one in my wife's car, in my car, just to make sure when I leave the house I don't forget one. Well, guess what? That thing's just picking up dust. I'm picking it up, I'm putting it in my pocket, I'm putting it back, like it's picking up germs. Like it's not a healthy, clean thing. And I just saw an article today about Dr. Fauci saying that now he's kind of going back on his recommendations of wearing 2 masks. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like next thing you know, they're going to be asking us to wear 2 condoms. It's like, it's so silly. It's like, well, like obviously wearing 2 masks is insane. Like this is the same guy that not too long ago was telling us not to wear any masks. And then he's like, well, I didn't want the masks to, everybody buy all the masks. It's like, if you really cared about people's lives, and if you truly believe that wearing something on your face could save lives, why wouldn't you just tell people, like, listen, don't go out and buy all the masks, but take a rag, take a shirt, take something, a cloth, rip it, make a homemade a mask at home, and it'll help the spread of this. He didn't say that because it wasn't a political thing at the time, and then it became a political thing, and that's when he had to change his mind. But yeah.
I feel like this is my own theory. Most of the guys that's telling us what to do most likely got bullied so hard when they was young, and now they have the power to set the world straight. Because my company, one guy got sick, we are 600, and the government came there to try to shut the place down. And then they compromised with, if everybody uses masks or the fucking face shield, if your friend close to you get COVID, you still can work because, well, the mask supposedly works. So that's how they compromised.
Well, I don't know what's going on in your neck of the woods, everybody who's involved in the conversation, but it seems like 1 out of every 2-3 people I know have had the virus, like, and everybody's fine. But yet when somebody gets the virus, they still act like it's a big deal. You know, people are like, oh, you know, I hope you get well. Or, you know, it's like if somebody tells me that my buddy, you know, was diagnosed with cancer, like I'm going to fucking freak out. I'm going to text message him, I'm going to call him, make sure he's okay. If somebody, like I've gotten to the point where if I hear that somebody tests positive for the virus and I know that they're a somewhat healthy person and not an old person, I don't even bother text messaging them because I'm not concerned about them. I'm just gonna be like, well, I'll see you in 2 weeks because I think you have to stay at home for whatever reason. But and it's the only time that you can be called sick and have to quarantine and have zero symptoms. You have zero evidence of being sick. Like if I went to a hospital or I went to go see my doctor and I said, hey, I'm sick. And like, okay, we'll do all these tests. You don't seem to have any symptoms. Like, I think you're good. Go home. No, I'm sick. Like I'm it's like, well, if you don't have any symptoms, are you really sick? You know, it's wild how we've redefined things. And somebody else is jumping in. Richard, it's nice to see some new faces too.
Yeah. I'll let people speak, but yeah, it's the same here. I feel the same. I asked the people
And apparently,
in my company, is the guy sick or no? They couldn't answer. They would just like he tested positive. Then they quarantined like 20 people and overreacted massively. And now everybody's scared.
Well, you know, I feel like if somebody goes to the doctor sick, and for instance, they might even have the flu, but I don't even think they're testing for the flu right now. It's like.
So I heard on the No Agenda show, and this was like really interesting. I you know, it's hard kind of to keep up with all the news, and there's so much. I don't know what the hell that was. I hope you guys didn't hear that. But it's so hard to keep up with all the current events and the news and all the podcasts I listen to try to keep up with everything. But I didn't hear much conversation about it afterwards. But the No Agenda show, on one of the episodes the last couple of weeks, they talked about how one of the universities actually asked for samples of the virus, and they got like, I forget how many samples, but they're all influenza, you know, samples, and they're like, this isn't what we need. Like, does this virus exist besides on some like computer graphic program that created this? And I don't know if there's any new information on that, but according to what they said on that show was that they were basically gonna sue or, you know, basically really push this issue with the CDC because they don't seem to have any real evidence of the virus. I mean, some people have said that. I don't like to jump to that conclusion because, again, it's one of those things where, like, does the virus exist? I don't know. I mean, does it, you know, either way, I don't think it's as important as the fact that, like, it's not killing people, you know, for the most part. Like, and if it is killing some people, well, guess what? A lot of shit kills some people. Like, it doesn't justify the reaction. And I think too often everybody who's just like, wear a mask or, you know, get the vaccine, and they kept making it seem like the finish line was, we'll get the vaccine and we've come to the conclusion that we can that it doesn't hurt healthy younger people, but we should all get the vaccine because they'll protect the older people and the people who have autoimmune issues and other health issues. But now we've come to the conclusion that even the vaccine companies have not they have not said that it stops the spread of it. And there's articles and articles, like all the things that all of us have been talking about for months and months and months. I mean, 9 months ago, if we did this podcast and we were all talking about 99% of people are going to survive the virus, you know, it's just a bad flu, which means just like a bad flu, like it will kill old people and unhealthy people. That's who the flu kills, you know? So all these things we're saying, that vitamin C and vitamin D is important, and, you know, keeping your immune system strong, go outside, exercise, all these things, like all these things that are now acceptable. 9 months ago, we'd be getting ripped off YouTube. We'd be getting ripped off because now it's like they push this idea that this thing is so deadly. But after sports started up again, after people started having friends and loved ones that started testing positive and being fine, like little by little, they had to give in. They're like, okay, we can't keep saying that this is the most deadly thing ever because there's just too much evidence it's not. So now we kind of just have to say, well, we have to protect the old people with the vaccine that was never tested on old people. You know, it was never tested on elderly people. A lot of these studies, usually they're with younger, healthy people who don't have pre-existing conditions, because you don't want any of those pre-existing conditions to get in the way of the study. So you're literally giving the vaccine to people that the study didn't really, you know, it wasn't a part of the study. These people weren't a part of the study. So I think that alone is super dangerous. Do you guys have any friends or family that have gotten the vaccine that you know of?
Yes, my uncle did recently, despite me, pretty much lecturing him about how, you pretty much are the experiment when you get this done, and the company has no liability, and it's like he agreed with all that, but he's like in his late 70s, and he's so scared of, he listens to NPR, and he's just convinced that the vaccine is safer than the actual chance of getting COVID.
Do you have any idea what company's vaccine you took?
It was Pfizer.
Okay. Because we got the AstraZeneca, we have Pfizer and Moderna from before, but AstraZeneca we don't give to 70 years, 70 years older, because they have new study that older people die and it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, so far he's good, but he still has to get a second dose sooner or later. And, you hear reports about people getting to have these adverse reactions, and it's like, even if he gets the second dose and it's fine, you still don't know what problems could develop months or years down the line.
Yeah, I saw a half scary meme today. I laughed first, but when I think about it, it's George Guidestones tells us that they're trying to kill 90% of the people, and WHO is also trying to vaccinate 90% of the people. So, yeah.
Kind of makes sense. Yeah.
What about you, Ricky? Do you know anybody, like friends or family?
Yeah, I do actually. Okay, now it's a proper celebration. I got some bourbon. But
Cheers, man.
cheers. If you guys want to go get drunk, I mean, if this lasts long enough, we'll be slurring our words. Yeah, I do actually. I know quite a few people that actually have gotten it. I don't know which one. A lot of the I will say a lot of the people that I know that did get it, they did. I feel like they were trying to do the right thing by saying, "Hey, this was my choice. This was something I'm not saying you should go get it. You should look up the information and you should be a little skeptical." But the truth is, like, even the people that are saying that, you're skeptical, even if you're telling people to be skeptical and do the research, where the fuck do you do the research? Like, if you go on Google or YouTube, you're not going to find any information that says anything against the narrative. I mean, look at Del Bigtree, for example. When he was on during the lockdown on my show, and I know even that debate he had with Grime, he was on the Grime America show. It was like a swap cast with the Conspiracy Farm guys, and he debated this other scientist on vaccines. That was suppressed on iTunes. When he was on my show during the height of the lockdown, that was suppressed on iTunes. They wouldn't play it for a couple days. It like disappeared. And this is the same guy that his nonprofit organization, ICANN, sued Massachusetts, where I live, and got rid of the mandatory flu vaccine in Massachusetts for kids to go back to school, which was awesome because, like, I kept telling people, I'm like, people were actually outraged, surprisingly, that about the flu vaccine, the mandatory flu vaccine. I'm like, you do realize, like, they're just adding one more to the many vaccines your kids have to get to go to school. I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. You should be outraged about all of them, because the fact that they force you to have to get all these vaccines to comply, to me, I think it is crazy. But either way, like, it was another example of how this has gone so off the rails that none of the things that are going on even have anything to do with the virus anymore. Like, they mandate the flu vaccine. What the fuck does that have to do with the virus? According to statistics, which we all kind of know why, the flu's disappeared. It didn't, it had a bad 2020. It went in hiding, and it's like, it disappeared. So it's like, what are we even mandating this for when, like, there's no evidence of the flu, which we know why, because things have been misdiagnosed. But according to their information, there's no evidence of the flu, but yet you're mandating the flu vaccine for kids. Like, and a lot of parents, that's one of the vaccines when you're an adult, some parents get. And that's why they're skeptical of it, because so many people got skeptical of it because many people they know as adults would get the flu vaccine and get sick or have some adverse reactions. So now they're like, oh, wait. Oh, Charlie Robinson's with us. Look who it is.
Oh, shit.
He'll be joining us in a second. But yeah, so what's up, Charlie? Oh, look at this. You got a couple fans here, Charlie.
I do?
Yeah, you didn't see the book?
Oh, nice. Love
Charlie,
it.
by the way, you're the first guy that I ever bought a book from listening to a podcast back when you were first time on. Has to be a few years ago on the High Side Chats.
Wow. I
I
appreciate that.
I bought the Octopus of Global Control.
Thank you.
I listened to that podcast and it blew my fucking mind.
Oh
I
man.
was like, holy shit. I went home, straight home, bought the book on whatever is this fucking app I have on my computer. Where is it?
And Ronnie's from Finland, so he's representing you in Finland, Charlie.
I'm flattered, man, and I'm really appreciative, and thank you so much. And that's cool. And Greg Carlwood is great, and Greg got me introduced to Sam. He's how I met Sam Tripoli. I actually asked him, I said, could you hook that up? And he's like, yeah, for sure.
Kindle, by the way.
Kindle.
Yeah. But I'm not sure how I found Greg. I might be through Sam, not sure. I just have been following him for a few years. But your first book, it's what can you say? They say the shit. Read it.
I should have put that on the back. What the fuck can I say? Just fucking read it.
Yeah, I told my father last weekend when I went to visit him, and then we talked about like how all this shit is going, and like in was it 70s or 72 or something when they said about the Green New Deal stuff, and they are going to make the stuff about the global warming if it's
Right.
not true or not.
Yep.
And he was like, why the fuck would they do that? I was like, they're psychopaths. And he was like, what do you mean? I can't. Well, you're not them.
Right. It's hard to explain it. It's hard to understand it if you're not a crazy person like they are. If you're crazy, then they go, oh yeah, of course, it makes perfect sense. We'll rule the world. We'll tell everyone it's because of the climate. We'll tax them. We'll take all that money. Oh, you're going to use all that money to fix the climate? No, there's nothing wrong with the climate. We're just going to keep all the money. Well, what about the people? Fuck them. They'll figure it out.
Exactly.
That's what they think. That's how they operate. They don't care.
Yeah. Shiva did a nice 10-minute video about that.
He
Green
did.
New Deal.
He did a great one on that.
If you haven't seen it,
carbon.
check it out.
Yeah.
And how they're going to take the money and we get the credit. Yeah, fuck you. Like I need it.
I'm so tired of hearing about carbon. It's like, what about pollution? What about the military pollution? It's like.
Well,
yeah.
On September 11th, when they had the no-fly thing, when they didn't let any planes in the air except obviously the Bin Ladens who were flying out of the U.S., but when they did that, they actually said that the average temperature of the whole U.S. actually dropped like 3 degrees or something like that. Just so I mean, like you said, think about that. I mean, everything from the military to all these big corporations, these planes are in the air all day, every day. It has to have some effect.
Like we got bigger issues than carbon.
Yeah. And you see all these, even the whatever they call the Great Reset, they're using a lot of the environmental bullshit to justify this change. It's like, oh, let's just make things better. We're not trying to do any harm. We're just trying to make things better. It's like, no, you know what? Let's get things back to the way they were. And then, let's try to improve things up, because you're just remolding society without our say. And the crazy thing is they're doing it out in the open. I mean, the World Economic Forum has a podcast. I mean, you look at the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the Great Reset book. I mean, these are it's discussions they're having out in the open. You see this over and over again with obviously PNAC before September 11th and talking about that. But it's amazing to me how we get so caught up in everyday life that they can openly talk about this stuff with think tanks and all, write books about it. And we're just so unaware. And then when it happens, like, oh, fuck. I mean, think about Event 201. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't know jack shit about it until after, the law.
They have a new one, by the way.
Which
Spars.
one?
Yeah, they have no agenda talked about it. They have a new Spars 2025. No, 2020. Yeah, 2025. Spars is coming to kill us.
Oh, great. Can't
It-
wait. Let me guess.
Yeah,
Robots
yeah.
killing
They
us.
they simulated a new one, Spars pandemic. You Google it. I
Wow.
guess you will find. I read like 10 pages. It was mostly like you will have a screens on your
Veronica.
shoulders and stuff and blah blah blah. And they were pretty sure the president you have now, Biden, will last only 4 years and the vice president will take over. So
Hmm.
Yeah, some people don't even.
that's what's in the fucking scenario. So I was like, what? Whatever.
Oh, that's actually in this scenario.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's wild. You're gonna have to send me a link to that. I don't even know anything about it.
Uh, you should. It's the last no agenda, I think.
Oh, they talked about in the last no agenda. I'm a little. I don't know about you guys. I have such a hard time keeping up with podcasts. Somebody told me today at the gym. They're like, yo, your show's like the Joe Rogan show, but he puts out too many shows. I can't keep up with it. I'm like, you're kind of right, man. Like there is this balancing. I don't know how Charlie and Monica are with like putting out content. Like there is. In a way, it's like if you don't put out enough content, people forget about you because there's so many other things to get your attention. But then if you put out too much, it's like they can't keep up with it. So it's like this balancing act of like, okay, how much do I put out? How much, to stay.
I just had that thought today that we do 30 minutes free and 15 minutes paid. And today we did 42 minutes free. And I was like, well, if you're giving everything away, it's like my mother used to say, don't give it away. Get a rich guy.
Well, what's that saying? You marry the first time for love, you marry the second time for money.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. But unfortunately, this thing's dragging on for 20 plus years. So I guess I'm stuck with love.
But I like the last interview. Maybe last. I haven't checked if you have a new one in the past 2 days. The vaccine lady. That her
Oh,
friend-
Tina Marie?
Yeah.
I
Good
met her through the Union of the Unwanted. Tim hooks me up with her, and I met her through Ricky, of course. And man, she was bold. Like
Oh, it's on fire.
Yeah, it's fine with me. Like I'm totally fine with it, but she is just calling people out in the anti-vax movement. Like that's kind of bold. But boy, I really never interviewed anyone like the no agenda handle is obviously taken, but that chick she's got her agenda. It's very clear what it is, and she's just no compromise.
Well, I guess if your best friend dies, well,
Yeah,
you let loose, I guess.
and
No
sees it
holding
coming.
back then. Yeah, and that too.
Yeah.
Who?
By the way,
Yeah, go ahead, Ronnie.
yeah. Your interview with I'm gonna sneak in here, James.
Oh, James Lyons. Yeah.
I listened to it today at work. I went out for a smoke, and I talked to my colleagues, and another colleague came in, and I was talking about the numbers and what he said, and she came, "That's so wrong. Stop talking about that." And I was like, "Do you even know what I'm talking about?" So I was like, "So I heard about this study," and she was like, "I don't believe you." And I told her about the study, and she was like, "I don't believe you. It's a free country. I can believe whatever I want. I don't have to believe your studies. I don't have to believe anybody's studies. I have my mindset." And I was like, okay.
Science is subjective.
Yeah.
I mean, how is that?
I asked that too. How's that possible? If it's science, how can you have an...
back world?
It's so confusing.
Well, if you guys aren't familiar with Dr. James Lyons Wheeler, he was a part of a study with Dr. Paul Thomas and Dr. James. We got people from Finland, from Australia, international. You guys, does anybody
East Coast, West Coast?
Yes, yeah. But the show I did with Dr. James Lyons Wheeler, he was a part of a study, and this study to me is like super important because it's something that we've all wanted. For better or worse, it doesn't matter which side you're on of the debate. They had a pediatrician, Dr. Paul Thomas, who he's always been open with telling his, people who go there, telling the families like, hey, if you want to vaccinate your kids, great. If you don't, I'm not against it. So he was the perfect practice to be a part of a study where they could do unvax against vax kids, and they even did partially vax. They really did a great study, and it was obvious that what happened after they published the study, that kids who were unvaccinated, even more than the kids who were partially vaccinated or maybe pushed back to schedule, they were healthier. They had less autoimmune issues. They had less, all issues, allergies. So all this stuff. And then, of course, what happens to Dr. Paul Thomas? His license gets pulled immediately after. So now there's all these legal battles and all this stuff. But Dr. James Lyons Wheeler, I'm going to struggle to say his name over and over again, especially while drinking. But he, he was just basically a scientist. He worked at universities. He worked with pharmaceutical companies. I mean, this guy has a crazy resume. He's been on Ernest Hancock's show. He's been on Spiro. I know some of you guys listen to Spiro. He was on his show not too long ago. And this guy really, and he's another guy who, like, he doesn't really have agenda. He's more of a statistic guy. He looks at the, he looks at the statistics. He looks at the study. He kind of figures out, the information, and nobody seems to really have a agenda. And the thing is too, is like, why would you pull Dr. Paul Thomas his license when obviously he's not anti-vax, because at his practice, he was letting people who wanted to get vaccinated. So he wasn't preventing anybody from doing it. He was just giving you the option. And what James said was Dr. James Lyons Wheeler, that he's like the biggest sweetheart. He's like, oh, there's videos of him pulling earwax out of kids' ears. And he's like, this kid he just loves kids. He's a sweetheart of a guy. And he's like, I really feel bad for him. And so a lot of people are going to bat for him and kind of just supporting him and helping him out. So it's but a study like this, like if people truly want to get to the truth, whatever the truth may be, like what's riskier? Giving your kids vaccines, according to the CDC schedule, and that many when they tell you to, or not giving your kids any vaccines. Why wouldn't you want that study done? If you think that you're right, if you think that, that it is risky not giving your kids any vaccines, then why wouldn't you want that study done? So I think that alone tells you something, because it wouldn't be a hard study. And it's something that, if you get a practice like Dr. Paul Thomas's practice, where they kind of let you do both, you can get a lot. I mean, I think they had like over 2,000 kids a part of this study. I mean, it wasn't a small, study. It was a huge study. And then that happened. So, I mean, I think all these things are just evidence that there's obviously something there. There's something,
Another thing is the not only like a short, easy study like that. And I always wonder when people's like long haul COVID or long-term effects of something or whatever. But I read a really interesting article. It was on a Lou Rockwell post from a long time ago, Dr. Donald Miller. And he suggested that, so like, I'd also like to see that study, but in very long term, because what he suggested was that childhood fevers develop a secondary immune system that helps fight cancer later in life. And like, because we have the germ theory, we don't think of immune system as anything but just like battling germs. But now that I'm starting to understand that it's, viral germ theory, especially, has never been proven, that a terrain theory is important. I even will go back to miasma theory. Like, there's stuff in the air that makes you sick. I'm reading The Invisible Universe, but the immune system. So I noticed this, like I had a blood test done once when I was really stressed out, and my white blood cells were through the roof. So like the quote immune system, I don't even think we should call it that, but it responds to stress. It prevents cancer. It helps prevent illness. And if what he's saying is true, that these vaccinations suppress whatever kind of illness, symptoms, whatever, that you are no longer getting those childhood fevers, you would see in the very long run, maybe that is connected to some of these cancers that are reemerging and getting younger and younger. Like my nephew died of colon cancer at the age of 41. Wow. And I mean, that's really mystifying to me. Now, he was on, like, his whole life, he was on Prozac and he was on Accutane when he was young. He's fully vaccinated. I don't know what it is, but that is unheard of, before that generation, millennials or whatever. And so the longer term study to me would be really critical. And they if they're not going to do a 1-year study, they're not going to do a 20, 30-year study.
Yeah, that's why. Well, Nancy would be the perfect person to talk about this. She was.
Hi, Ricky.
What's up, Nancy? How are you?
Congratulations.
Thank you. 300. It's I think it was Brett Venat from School Sucks said the average podcast lasts 7 episodes. So I'm way past 7 episodes.
And you have such amazing topics and guests. You really should be commended that you constantly put all of this information out that you don't get in mainstream media. So you're amazing. Congratulations.
And you've been a part of that. I mean, you were
you.
one. You were on the first couple of years I was on the show. I think your first appearance talking about homeopathic stuff, and I think a lot of it's funny because I've said this multiple times on the show. When I was doing those shows that had any relation to big pharma, alternative medicine, all this stuff, anybody who's kind of researching that stuff could already see like this happening, to the point that this was basically going to be just getting out of control, where they were suppressing anybody who had a second opinion. And like I say over and over again, I mean, typically if one of us has an issue, it's completely okay for me to go to a doctor, get a second opinion, go to another doctor, get a third opinion. If I have multiple doctors that don't agree, completely acceptable in almost all aspects of life, except now. Like now it's like these doctors are the Pope, and listen to him, and anybody else who says anything otherwise is pseudoscience and should be banned. And it is one of those things where this censorship issue should not only be scary for people who are in the vaccine battle or big pharma or whatever it may be, but everybody should be worried about it. Because I mean, the way that they can just basically rewrite history. I mean, think about it. If my kids get to an age where they're like, okay, I kind of, my son's turning 6, my daughter's 4. They're like, hey, let me go online and research what the fuck happened in 2020. What a crazy year. I kind of just remember mom and dad being a little stressed out and telling us kind of what was going on. And if they go online, all they're going to find is a bunch of a-holes like us didn't want to wear masks and we killed people and all these other things. Like they're literally rewriting history. I mean, when they say that the history is written by the winners, we're seeing it right now. Like we're seeing it because you go online, you do research, and unless you're aware of Odyssey or Float or BitChute, all these other alternatives, you're fucked. I mean, the average person is going to go online and typically they're going to use Google, they're going to use YouTube, and that's why I think supporting some of these alternatives are so important. And it's nice to see that a lot of people are moving on to there. I was telling some of the guys that are on the show today previously that now Odyssey gives you the ability to live stream. So that's like one more reason to go to Odyssey if you want to live stream. So I think more and more time's going to go by and people are going to slowly start going to those other options. Those other options are going to get better. And hopefully to capitalize it, like Sam Tripoli says, nobody, he talks about MySpace, and it's true. Like nobody thought at the height of MySpace that was going to fail, that everybody, but I think young kids are a big part of it, right? When you have so many grandmothers and aunts and uncles on Facebook, you're going to be like, fuck Facebook. That's not cool anymore. Like, let's see what the new thing is. And they're going to help kind of push whatever the new trend is. So I got my fingers crossed.
Nokia.
I hope so.
Nancy, you've been keeping up with all the I asked some of the people that were on the call if they knew anybody who got the vaccine, and I do. I know some people, and actually I know one person who was bedridden for a couple of days because her face swelled up and was in and she's my age. I'm 35. She's probably a year or two older than I am, and so it's you're starting to hear more and more of this. Even the Bell's palsy thing. Like I just shared a mainstream article talking about Bell's palsy, and it's funny because when they first started giving the vaccine and I brought this up, people are like, oh yeah, that's crazy. And now they're finally like, is it to the point where like you have to talk about it publicly on mainstream media because you can't avoid it? It's like it's gonna be an open secret. Like people are gonna know that loved ones or friends of theirs are gonna have these adverse reactions. So you either have to admit it or hide it, but you probably can't hide it for long.
I think they're hiding it now. So I work with essential workers who I say it's a personal decision. I'll support you either way, but I give them all the facts. And interesting enough, it wasn't mandated in the schools, but it was peer pressure from the parents of the children, as well as the admin, because they all went and got it and they took pictures and they had stickers. So the people who initially did not want it ended up falling into peer pressure and getting it. And it seems that they are sharing their side effects quietly, but there are side effects. So we have homeopathic remedies that could pull out the petroleum, the PEG, but this is more gene therapy than a vaccine. So it's a big mess. And if you have autoimmune issues, I'm very concerned. I'm concerned about the whole thing. Again, if a person wants to get it, let them have it if they want it. But they really are not told the consequences and the side effects, as well as the ingredients. So when I bring it to their attention about the PEG or what this specifically does, or what's the mRNA and everything else, they have no clue. And I was reading today that they said not only do you need multiple ones, and maybe the immunity lasts 100-something days, but now you need boosters for all the variants that are coming out. I was like, this is just a crap show. This is constantly like the snowball. And then to reach herd immunity, they want to start doing children in the summer. So that's a disaster waiting to happen. But I mean, I'm surprised, like with the whole election, we had to deal with governmental issues. We had to deal with pharmaceutical, big tech, media, financial, like everything is falling apart at once. And we're losing so much freedom across the board. So, but yeah, I would tell everyone to do their research, and the side effects, whoever brings it out is being censored. So you'll see it happening quietly, maybe in direct messaging groups.
And like I tweeted, everybody's just saying, oh, go get the vaccine. Oh, I'm going to go get the vaccine. But nobody's asking like which vaccine, what type of vaccine, who's the manufacturer, are the studies done? Have you looked into the ingredients? Have you looked into the study itself? Like it just seems like people are so brainwashed into believing that getting the vaccine is the right thing to do for humanity. And nobody's asking any of those crucial questions. They're all defending the vaccine, just the vaccine, like there's only one and it's been proven to be safe and effective. I mean, it's madness.
Not at all.
About 1 second, sorry. About the vaccines, Finland is now disputing about Sputnik. It's 90-something%. I've read today. The government news is telling Sputnik, take it. I'm like, 3-4 months ago, they said the Russian vaccine is too early. Don't use it. But
That's a conventional one, right? That's the one that like it just
it's the basic stuff.
Which they say coronavirus like could never work in a conventional one. Now I wonder if they just said that so that we'd be open to this gene therapy type thing. But Nancy, maybe when Ronnie says like it's 90-something% effective, somebody sent me like a kind of how to do the math on effectiveness. And if I'm remembering the numbers, when I read about the Russian thing, it was in the newspaper today. It said 15,000 people took the vaccination and 5,000 took the placebo. It didn't say if it was saline or not, but it was a placebo. And they said of the 15,000, 16 came down with the illness and 62 came down with the illness of the 5,000. Now, the way they do the math, they kind of say it's effective because I don't know if they're saying it's like 62 out of 78 or whatever, but I did the math and it looked to me that it's like 20% effective because 16 out of 5,000 to 62 to 15,000 isn't 99% or whatever. It's a much smaller ratio. What would be the right way to think of that?
I mean, you're looking at it deeper. And the numbers that they say are just trying to convince them. Look, there's not enough, looking at the ones that we have, Moderna, Pfizer, and all of those, there's not enough studies. The studies that they had on they didn't do anything. They really did not do any study that would convince me, A, it's effective, B, it's safe. So if it's not effective and it's not safe, but therapeutics are safe and effective, why would you rush to get
With
it?
the Moderna one, this is totally statistically zero because they did 15,000 with the vax. They did 15,000 with a saline placebo, and no one who got the vax died, and one person who got the placebo died. That supposedly of COVID. I mean, that has no statistical meaning whatsoever. That's a
None of them
zero
do.
efficacy.
Honestly, none of them do. If you really look at them and then you see who's writing the research, you have to look at what they're trying to convince you with. I mean, everything is, the more you lie, the better people will believe it. AOC almost got murdered. Meanwhile, she wasn't in the building. I mean, like, it's getting out of hand. It's really getting out of hand now. But the vaccines, I mean, the therapeutics work. I mean, I've worked with so many people that none of them went to the hospital. It was all therapeutics.
Right. Is the media as bad like everywhere else? These people are in other countries. Is it the same, just complete utter nonsense? They'll show you a picture of one thing and say it's something else and then talk about it as if it's something else.
It's not US bad. That's fucked up, but
well, it's the same in both Norway and Canada is doing the same. Like they have like here now that they have the vaccine, like people are in Norway, they're dying off of the vaccine, but no, they have underlying conditions, the old people. But when they died of COVID, nobody cared about that. They died of COVID. So it's
Right.
like a whole two-tiered system. But like last time I looked, it was like 279 dead in the US, 30 in Norway, 10 in Germany, 1 in Portugal. And I think that's about it that I've seen.
Guys, I got
43 in Sweden last time I checked.
I got a pop quiz. See how long you guys been listening to this show. Any of you guys know who Dave K is?
Oh yeah.
Scott, have you been listening to the show for that long?
Well, I've gone back and listened to some of your old stuff.
Oh,
in fact, I was gonna do a little something here. Let's see if we can do this here.
So for some of you guys, actually, I don't know if the first time Nancy was on, if Dave was still co-hosting.
Is this? Do you hear me if I talk? I've never done this.
Oh,
Can
my
you hear
God.
me?
Yeah, I hear you, Dave. And look,
so I saw Nancy on here. Nancy was the first solo show you did, and I remember listening to it, and you knocked it out of the park. And I give Nancy a lot of credit for that, because you were so new when you did it, and Nancy was just a great. That was a great show. It was the first one you did without me, and I'm like, I ain't going back. I don't need to do this anymore. You're awesome.
Yeah, Ricky was great.
So a lot of times when I'm discussing the origin of the show, when I do interviews, I'm always like, oh, I started the show with one of my friends, Dave. Well, that's Dave. That's the guy I started the show with. It was funny because I think a lot of us podcasters so Dave, just to fill you in, right now it's a mixture of content creators and researchers and fans. So I let the Patreon listeners jump in too. So it's probably a little.
Oh, yeah, that is Dave K. There he is. Yeah.
So I'm trying to. So if it's green, that means you can hear me. All right, I'm figuring this all out.
Yeah.
I'm scrolling through the faces and things like that, and I appreciate explaining who everybody is. If you guys like Ricky on this show, he's 10 times better in person and as a human being. He's the greatest, most generous, sincere guy. He came up with this whole podcast idea back like before Joe Rogan was even anything. This was like, I don't know, 8 years ago. And I can't believe 300 episodes. That blows my mind. I can't believe you're still doing this. When did you start?
We started 2000. I think our very first episode was late 2013. And I think like a lot of people who are getting into the podcast, just, I guess, realm or just getting into that whole idea of like possibly recording, just discussing things, to people from the outside looking in, it seems silly, right? I mean, I remember to Dave, it seemed silly.
To me, yeah. To me, it was ridiculous. It actually took, so Ricky had everything. He bought everything he needed. He basically built a studio and would beg me every time I saw him, like, hey, I have this idea. Like, he'd reintroduce me to this idea of a podcast every single time, like I'd never heard it before. And he's like, I have this great idea, and it's podcasts, and it's the future. And I'm like, who the fuck wants to listen to us talk? Like, who? It was such a foreign concept way back then. So I'm like, all right, I'll do it. So Ricky takes me into his little studio there, and he's got everything. He's got it all set. He's got a mixing board, the whole 9 yards. And like, we always have had great conversations. And the night we turned the microphones on, it was like a horrible 20-minute, just random, like ridiculous conversation. So to see where and I never wanted to do it in the first place. And Ricky always carried the show. He's huge into researching things. Like, if there's something that needs to be known, Ricky will know it. He'll find it out. He'll figure it out. He researches everything very thoroughly. And I told him from the start, you don't need me, but I guess he just needed someone to look at, to talk to in the beginning. And then it was Corbett was your first real guest.
Yeah,
and
Corbett. And Jason Burmis was another one who was like one of the first ones too. Yeah.
And then Daniele Bolelli was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And then as time went by, not that I said much in the beginning, but as time went by, I said less and less and less. And it became me just like literally sitting there having to pee and getting out of there. And I'm like, dude, you are on your own. You're awesome. You got this. And it's amazing how good it is. Even like your intro, your trailer, how widespread you are. Like, you just know how you're like born to do this. You're the master of this stuff. And you deserve a million viewers, because you have guests from every walk of life. Like you have Nancy, you have Secret Service agents, you have Jesse, but you have everybody, like you just have a way of probably hounding people to come on your show till they do. And then they're like, wow, that was a good conversation. You know what I mean? So I don't want to stay on here too long. I just want to congratulate you on 300 episodes. That's amazing. And I didn't realize it was 13. So that's 8 years. You've been doing this 8 years. Just awesome. And it's cool to see all these people on here. Congratulations, man.
Thanks, Dave.
And like I said, in person and as a friend, you guys have no idea how great Ricky is. He's in our group of friends. He's like the glue that keeps all our friendships together. He's just a very special guy. So the world needs to see more of Ricky on all his platforms, which you can plug right now. So
you're making me blush. I'm gonna have to drink more. But yeah, but thanks, Dave. First of all, thank you very much. Without you, this would have never happened, because like you said, somebody had to sit there and stare at me while I talked. So or I would have felt crazy. But I think so. A lot of people, like Dave, their first reaction was like, why would you want to record us talking? But you answered your own question. I think a lot of people, they didn't think about it, but you said it. We enjoy having these conversations. I could foresee the need and the benefits of taking the conversations we all have with certain friends of ours. Like, we all have certain friends that, like, when you're together, you have a drink or you just hang out, a good conversation always gets sparked one way or another. You go into these deep personal conversations. And all I was trying to do was like, okay, let me capture that, record it, which is a lot, like many of you content creators know, when you have a microphone in front of you, it's much harder to do than you would think. You're like, okay, I'm just talking to a friend. I can just hit record and it should be exactly the same, but it's not. Like, once it's being recorded, once you have a microphone in front of you, it's hard to get to that casual part again, that casual feeling of like, okay, let me just spill the beans or just talk about something personal or whatnot. But I understood how beneficial those conversations were, because when Dave and I would talk, just like I said, many of you guys you have these certain friends that you would listen to. or talk to, and you would leave those conversations feeling like, wow, I feel like I learned something, or I feel like I got something off my chest, or I feel like we really challenged ideas or discovered ideas. I'm like, why wouldn't that be beneficial to share those conversations with others? And but what I also didn't understand is that not everybody has a Dave in their life. And throughout the years, a lot of people would hit me up and say, like, I feel like, I'm a part of the conversations I wish I was having in my own personal life. So I think it's benefited a lot of people in that aspect too. I mean, some of you other podcasters, Charlie, Monica, I know Nancy, John, I'm sure you guys, Truthzilla, I'm sure all you guys get similar type of responses where people sometimes just feel like, I don't have anybody in my life who's into these things, or I can have these deep conversations with. And so I think in many cases, that's where we kind of fit in. I do think that the future podcasts, because it's become such a popular thing, it almost seems like there's a threat. There was an article, I don't know if any of you guys caught it, about somebody told me about it. It might have been James Corbett when he recently appeared on the show, about them talking about like podcasts being a threat because there's no censorship and whatever. Because it does seem like the one place where there's the least censorship, which means it's just a matter of time before they're like, okay, this is a threat now. Somebody needs.
They called it a loophole.
That's what it was. Okay, you're right. Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about, Monica? Which article?
Yeah, I remember the article. I don't know where it appeared. I think it was something like The Atlantic, just your kind of top tier propaganda for the intelligentsia. And the idea is for sure that they're coming for it. And to tell you the truth, I mean, I've been amazed at how stuff that, like Ronnie was saying, the Tina Marie thing, it accidentally through Libsyn like uploaded to my YouTube channel, and Binkley texted me immediately. It was just like, you've got to get that down. You're gonna get a strike for that. But we weren't at all worried about pushing it through the regular podcast feed or Patreon or whatever. But I'm confident it's a matter of time. So I personally am trying to put a little time and money into just moving stuff. We moved it on to virtual private server, and we're going to move from Discord to Mastodon and like stuff like that, because it just seems like a matter of time. Collecting email addresses. I'm trying to get like everybody who really wants to come with us into the tunnels. Then we're going to be able to send them an email. I got a private email server. Like, I'm just trying to batten down the hatches, because it's coming.
By the way, Monica, they have a new 201. The SPARS pandemic. They have simulated a new one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's coming 2025.
Oh, yes. Where was that? Is that a Rockefeller thing?
No, it's John Hopkins.
Right. Those fucking people.
Is it out on YouTube as well, like Event 201 is, or?
No, it's just a 200 paper document. They are planning out the basics, and they are making sure. I'm sure they're going to do a Event 201 in 1 or 2 years. That's the first, like, if you have these questions, how are we going to move them forward? And then they're going to do them live, I guess, at some point. But that's
Binkley brought all these clips from the Davos thing. It's so crazy. They're just like, people think that there's a conspiracy going on. It's like, how can you not think there's a conspiracy going on when they plan it 5 years in advance and publish it for all their friends to get ready? So hopefully you guys are on Rockfin and can see. I really don't even know how to get it out without going through Rockfin. But I mean, you can just look at the stuff on the Davos. It's just those clips where they talk about what they're doing and how they're doing it and whatever, clearly conspiring.
Yeah, I puked my pants. I listened to
pants.
Yeah, some of them. They had the fucking CEO of Coca-Cola on, and they was like, your company is so good and you're doing so much great stuff for the world. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? It's a fucking Coca-Cola. Fucking, I don't remember the country in South America where they are making it. All the people they're dying they're only drinking Coca-Cola. I mean, what the fuck? And he was like, yeah, I'm God. I was like,
The Salesforce guy did that. The Salesforce is the company that just moved into the Dow this year, so it's huge. And the guy literally like was breaking his own arm, patting himself. This is at Davos, saying it's the CEOs of the world that really stepped up and made 2020 happen. And I'm like, there's so many things wrong with that because 2020 was fucking awful. Sorry, am I not supposed to curse on your nice show,
dude,
Ricky?
oh, of course you can curse. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. If you have Dr. Judy on your channel, I'm cursing. Okay. So anyway, but he's like, I'm like, 2020 is terrible, and you guys aren't heroes. And he literally said they were not doing this for any kind of financial or personal gain, just doing it to save the world. I mean, I nearly puked my pants.
And Bezos is joining, Bill Gates now. He's stepping down as CEO of Amazon, and he's gonna focus on philanthropy.
Yeah, which basically just means I want to have influence everywhere and anywhere. Yeah,
it means he read the Rockefeller textbook.
It reminds me of that It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode where the dumb guy, I think it's Charlie, appropriately, is in a bar. He's trying to meet this girl on a blind date, and he doesn't know what to say. So he brings his buddy in, and his buddy's sitting at the other table pretending he doesn't know him. And he's sneaking over to him and saying, what do I say? What do I say to her? He's like, well, when she asks what you do for a living, tell her you're a philanthropist. And he's like, great idea. And he's like, philanthropist. He goes back over to the table. She's like, so what is it that you do for a living? And he goes, I'm a full-on rapist. and I just always think of that Davos crowd, you know what I mean? Or like the Epstein crowd that say we're philanthropists, but they're really just full-on rapists. That's their job is to go around and create chaos. And Monica, you were mentioning the guy, from Salesforce. That's Mark Benioff. He's on the board of the World Economic Forum. He's the CEO of Salesforce. He's also the owner of Time Magazine. And Time Magazine does not have a problem with propaganda. I mean, they flat out admitted it in the CFR. When Richard Stengel, the former editor-in-chief of Time Magazine, said, I frankly don't have a problem with propaganda.
Right.
I think
remember
it has
that.
a useful purpose. Every country uses it, and I don't have a problem with it. So Time Magazine ran a cover with Klaus Schwab on it. Time Magazine is owned by Mark Benioff, who is on the World Economic Forum's board of directors. So there is a feedback loop here of information that's going to be constantly used to paint these people as saviors, which they're not. They're clearly not saviors, and they're pathological liars if they come out and say that they spent 2020 just trying to take care of humanity. Really, we'll give back all the gains then from your stock,
and of course,
the trillions of dollars.
What this whole policy has done has eliminated 80% of the competition in every single industry. So if they can keep their seat at the table for a year or two, they're going to run the table. They run it now.
Well, 2020 wasn't completely horrendous because we had people like Charlie start his own podcast after writing some books. We had Truthzilla get into the crowd. We had the Conspiracy Synergy show pop up. So it's weird how when like one door closes, another one opens, and it seemed like it influenced people more than ever. Even with myself, I seem just to be more motivated to do more shows and book more guests and try to really just challenge ideas. And one thing I was doing a lot was having people on that I knew disagreed with me, because I was really curious on like, okay, then where do I stand on these issues? Do I have a valid argument? Have I thought this out? I remember a lot of people gave me positive feedback for having Scott Horton on, who's a friend of the show. A lot of people know him for his, being a very popular libertarian host and author, big into geopolitical stuff. But he was kind of drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. But I was willing to have him on. I wanted to have him on because I wanted to kind of challenge my own ideas. And it's like, okay, he's a very intelligent guy. Let's talk about this. And so I think those conversations were needed too, just people not just being in an echo chamber of like just everybody who agrees with one another, but having our ideas challenged. I think we've gotten to the point now that it's like, yeah, we kind of all agree that it's too obvious, but I think that we also need to find ways to kind of get through to people too. You know, one recurring theme you hear over and over on the show is with guests is that some people put their hands up to like, I'm done. I'm not going to talk to people about this shit anymore. Some people are just, you know, you can't get through to them, you know, but I truly believe that like we, you know, we can start a ripple effect and we can chip away a little bit and really just having discussions with people, not threatening them, not making them feel dumb, not, you know, telling them that, hey, I know the truth, you should listen to me, because that's kind of what everybody else is doing. It's like, okay, let's just analyze this. Let's just be logical thinkers. Let's have a conversation. And I think this goes back to like the power of long form conversation. One reason I loved Rogan's format when I started my show and why I wanted a very similar format is because there's something you get out of long form conversation you won't get in like a 10-minute, you know, conversation or, you know, 2 seconds into an elevator, you know, when you can really have time to dissect information and ideas and challenge ideas and see where those ideas take you. I think that's where you really get the most benefit out of conversation. That's why I think people love podcasts. A lot of people would say, I don't have time to listen to podcasts. I don't. And it's like, well, do you cut the grass? You can listen to podcasts then. Do you drive anywhere? You can listen to podcasts then. And I think even myself and Dave and I, when we started doing the show, I mean, we're both huge music fans. I felt like I started more and more neglecting listening to music, and I almost felt bad because I'm like, wow, I've always in the loop of like keeping up with new bands and the music scene. And then I just kind of lost track of things because I got so obsessed with like every opportunity I had to listen to music, I could listen to a podcast and listen to some new idea I've never explored or listen to some really, you know, fascinating person that I'd never heard of. And I got so obsessed with that and I think when we become adults, it's really easy to get stuck into like the rhythm of like, okay, you go to work, you do your 9 to 5, you come home, you do, you know, you go to the gym, you do your routine, and you can stimulate your body, but you can't really stimulate your brain, you know, or you feel like there's a lack of doing that. And podcasts was that for me. I remember driving places and getting to my destination and not getting out of the car, even though it's a podcast, I can pause it, but I wanted to see where the conversation was going. And I would sit in the car and just, I'm like, I'm late to an appointment, but I'm like, I'm curious on where this conversation is going. So I think people, you know, people say Americans are dumb and whatnot, but I think the how quickly podcasts kind of blew up in the last, you know, 10 years, whatever it is, 5 years, and every year it seems like we hit the ceiling, and then it's like, no, we didn't hit the ceiling. It keeps growing. I think it's because people really are fascinated with information and seeing different perspectives. And, you know, I think at one time universities were the place for that. Like you go there to discover yourself, to challenge ideas and get, you know, and discover ideas. But now that's kind of been just, I guess, professors kind of just pushing their opinions instead of letting you kind of discover, you know, different ideas. And so I think that hasn't been a spot. So I think podcasts have kind of filled that void a little bit, you know. Anybody have an opinion on that long rant of mine?
I think you're like completely spot on in a really, really, really profound way, because what we're missing most right now is community. And it's interesting that the community has migrated in a way in which we're viewing it vicariously. So what is a vicarious community? And what does that come to spur in people who feel as if they're missing that? And so that long form opportunity to be able to have conversations that we don't feel comfortable having in person. You know, if you meet a person, do you feel comfortable having a long form conversation? But if you're in a podcast, that's actually an avenue to go about exploring that. So I see it as like, it's rekindling and coming back to a point of that community and conversation in that way. So I think you're absolutely right.
I wanted to ask Ricky, I know you said you've been out of it a little bit, but like I know you've had some musical guests on in the past. And I was curious if you maybe had any plans to have another musician on in the future, since that industry has pretty much been completely destroyed. And like I was reading the other day that you have to get like 3.5 million streams on Spotify just to barely get minimum wage earnings. And wow. I thought that would be pretty interesting, since that industry is pretty much gone.
It's funny you ask, Zach, because I actually have been planning on it's during the whole lockdown thing. I got so like a lot of guests who weren't focused on these topics just felt like, oh, let's rebook it. Because I remember Gerard Williams was supposed to be on like right around the lockdown when it really started, hitting the U.S. And he's like, hey, should we reschedule? Does anybody want to hear about my book about World War II and Hitler and how he escaped to Argentina, during the lockdown when people were trying to figure that out? And I'm like, yeah, maybe you're right. And so I was booking. I mean, it kind of, like I keep saying on the show, like as much as we get like COVID fatigue where we want to talk about something else, there's so much news going on all the time. And it's these topics are so personal to us because it's affecting my kids' ability to go to school, my kids' ability to go to dance or soccer without having to wear a mask. It affects all aspects of our lives that, it's affected me personally because I work construction, like many of you guys know. We started really late in the season. We ended really early in the season. So it was a real short season. My wife's been in the restaurant business for a long time. So it hit her personally. I mean, during the holidays in Massachusetts, when they were just scaring the shit out of everybody about not going out, like she just, nobody was going out to eat. Like the restaurants were dead. It almost got to the point where she's like, it's barely worth my time showing up to work. She's like, I just sit there, nobody shows up. She's like, I'm away from my family all night and for one table, and unfortunately, when you're a mother, that kind of sucks, to be away from your family. At least if you feel like you're making money to feed your family, then you're like, okay, it's worth the sacrifice of being away from them for a long period of time. But yeah, so it sucks. And then also her having to wear a mask, if she works a double, she has to wear a mask from, all day, which, breathing in carbon dioxide all day is not healthy for you. And so, oh my God, this is why I call some of these shows Ricky Rants with Fans. But yeah, I thought about hitting up Burton C. Bell from Fear Factory again. He's done a lot of like, the whole theme of Fear Factory has been a lot of like, man versus machine Terminator type thing. And now with a lot of people kind of rediscovering like the threat of AI and transhumanism and like all, the possible direction we might be pushing humanity to. I think that'd be a fascinating guess. Also Fire from the Gods, they're another like somewhat political type of a band that I thought about reconnecting with them. And then also in the height of the lockdown, this UK band Hacktivist, they're a cool, like kind of like Rage Against the Machine, rap rock, new metal type band. And they were hitting me up and we were talking and they're like, oh, we're going to have to reconnect after things settle down and we have time to observe everything. So I definitely want to talk to musicians. Like I've said in the past, it seems like if the music's fascinating, then the musician seems to be fascinating, the artist. And it's no different than any artist. You look at T. Snyder, he's he's been in the arts for a long time. That's why every time he talks, he sounds so intelligent. It's not because he's standing or sitting in front of a bookshelf, even though that does help. Yeah, that does help.
Because I'm not stoned right now. That's the only reason I sound smart.
But yeah, so I think, yeah, musicians are interesting. I mean, I think unfortunately a lot of artists get so obsessed with their work and their craft that sometimes they don't really have a good grasp of other things that are going on. I think, I forget who my guest was that we were talking about this, how like we think if somebody's really intelligent, based on whatever art they're doing or whatever research they're doing, that they understand politics or they understand foreign policy or they understand propaganda or Edward Bernays or all these other things. And I don't think that's always the case. I think that sometimes you're so focused on what you do that there's other things that could be happening that you're just not aware of, and I use Dennis McKenna as kind of an example, and I hate to kind of pick on him because I really like him as a person. And the first time I had him on, we had an amazing conversation, but the second time I had him on, during the lockdown, he went on this whole, rant about how, Trump was the Antichrist and Biden was going to save us all. And I'm just like, you've done so many psychedelics in your life. You've done research on how big pharma suppresses plant medicines from being a alternative and something we could look into and research and benefit from because you understand the profit motive. And yet like you're falling into this. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, because you'd hear Rogan talk about, it's like, if we could just give everybody psychedelics and they could filter out all the bullshit in their lives, they could kind of not be brainwashed. And you look at like the anti-war movement in the 60s. You know, I've always thought of that whole movement. I'm like, oh, maybe the drugs helped because like you couldn't trick them because they're too fucked up. They were looking at things from different perspectives, and you couldn't use war propaganda to convince them to be for the Vietnam War or whatever it may be. But then I have Dennis McKenna on, who his whole life's work is psychedelics and plant medicines, and yet he kind of fell into the trap. But the more I thought about it, the more I kind of came to the conclusion that probably what it was, that he was so focused on that one topic that he's not aware of the power of lobbyists, the power of think tanks, the power of all these other things, how much goes into just manipulating the masses by, you know, I mean, even speech writers, right? Just something as simple as we all accept, you know, that presidents have speech writers. Like, what do? You know, they analyze how to say things, certain phrases, how to make you perceive something a certain way. So it's all manipulation of the public, you know, even at the most basic level, you know. So, and then you go deeper to, you know, I don't know if you guys ever watched Wag the Dog, you know, but great old movie. It was, I'm like, you watch that and you're just like, okay, this is how politics works. You know, you look at House of Cards, you know, when Kevin Spacey was in hiding because of all those things that he was doing, but he, you know,
rapist.
But when he was interviewed, when House of Cards was really peaking and he was interviewed, and they're like, hey, how unrealistic is this compared to like the you know, real politics? Because he had insiders that were helping mold the script and influence the script. He's like, the most unrealistic thing on the show is how, I think he said, like, how fast we passed like a bill, you know, like that was the most unrealistic thing. All the other things with, like, you know, the inside trading and the influencing each other and working with certain people or being for something or anti something based on who's paying for your campaigns or whatever, like that's all how politics works. It's all a illusion, you know.
Murdering people in broad daylight, you know, pushing them in front of subway, you know, that stuff.
Yeah, and some of the, yeah, and then also some of the other stuff, you know, prostitutes. I mean, all this stuff. I mean, this is, you know, you look at the DC Madam. I mean, this is not, you know, new stuff, you know. So it is one of those things where, what the hell was my point? I don't even know what my point was. I've been talking.
Hey, I've got Dennis McKenna coming on in 2 weeks too, Ricky. He's on my show. So.
I honestly think if I had him on now, we would have a great conversation again, you know, because we could kind of get away from that, you know. But I just truly think that, like, if you're so focused on one thing, you might, and how can you, you know, Dave's talked about this, like, I'm well researched, but the only reason I always say I'm an idiot, I'm just a conduit to really smart people. But Dave and I have talked about this, and I think Dave, you know, he said it once in one of our conversations where he's like, you know, would you rather know a lot about one thing or a little about a lot of things, you know? And when you look at the history of science, you know, it's a perfect example. A lot of people, the breakthroughs are people who are slightly out of those expertise. You know, it's people who they discover this because they were looking at it from a different perspective or because they came from a different field of work. So I think, yeah, I mean, if you can be an expert in one thing, but I think there's positives to that, but there's a lot of negatives in regards to you might be completely blind to all these other things that could really change the way you look at the world.
We talked about music here, so I have a question to someone that's smarter than me. Tom McDonald. You guys know him?
Who's Tom?
Heard about him? Tom McDonald. It's
is he an American artist?
Yeah,
he's if you have any Pearl Jam questions, ask Dave. Dave is a fanatic.
Have you guys not heard about this guy?
No, I know no.
Oh shit. I know something you don't.
I know
guys
Ronald McDonald.
Holy
shit. Is that the same person? Are they related?
Well, no. The question I had, but now I'm not sure I can ask it, but he's really ragging on the elite and fuck everything about the elite. But then when you look, shot by Nova Rockefeller, and she is his girlfriend. So I'm really confused. Because he's really going hard and he's telling everybody the system is fucked. He's a white rapper with tattoos all over his face. Look him up. He has 13 million views on this video.
Is this the fake woke dude?
I guess because his girlfriend is a Rockefeller. So I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And Tim Pool talked about wanting having him on. So I was like, do you know his girlfriend is a Rockefeller?
Yeah, but I wonder if maybe that's what I mean. You know, we like to assume everybody with the same last name has the same thoughts, but it's possible that somebody could be like, hey, I don't want to be like my rich, horrible dad who was never around because he was too busy influencing, you know, the world. So I mean, it's but I'll have to look into it because I love.
Of course, give them the benefit of a doubt, but I'm like, it's weird.
Anybody aware of any? Well, I talked about Hacktivist. They're kind of a politically social issue type of band. Fear Factory, Low Key, Akela, Pearl Jam. You know, Pearl Jam hits on a lot of political issues, right, Dave?
I mean, you know what? I prefer them to not be political because I just enjoy their music. But yeah, they went pretty hard at Trump on their last album. But you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, I feel like artists do that a lot. I mean, it's rare to hear somebody in the other direction, you know, like it seems like I almost feel like if you're an artist, then you're compassionate. You're not really motivated by money because you wouldn't be pursuing a life of being an artist. You know, it's not really that profitable. And I think you relate with the left much more. You know, it's like that saying, if you're not a liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart. If you're not a conservative when you're old, you don't have a brain. And it, you know, I kind of get it. I get that idea of like, okay, I'm an artist. I might not be too familiar with, you know, all the politics and all that stuff that's going on, but the left just appeals to me more because historically I've been basically brainwashed to believe that they're the ones who care about racism and all these social issues. And same thing with like myself. I mean, when I really got politically aware what was going on and motivated, it was after September 11th. And who did I hate? Bush. And who was bringing us to all these unjust wars? Republicans. You know, you look at Project for New American Century and all the neocons, like that's kind of was my motivation. So it was very easy for me to get caught up in like, okay, if these guys are the bad guys, then those other guys must be the good guys, you know? So has anybody had that transition, you know, in their lives? And
I was going to say, I don't know if you heard Sam Tripoli's podcast. He had Stephen Carpenter from the Deftones on there.
Yeah, I did listen. It was funny because we were text messaging. I think Charlie, Sam, and Midnight Mike and I were text messaging about that. And it's amazing how when he has somebody on like that, you know, so Dave, if you're, you know, obviously you know who the Deftones are.
Yeah.
He had Sam Tripoli, who hosts the other show with us, Union of the Unwanted, with actually Charlie, who's on this call, and then Midnight Mike. Everything that happened on that podcast, they just took it and made it like, you know, a story, you know. So literally it was like, oh, did you hear this? The guitars of Deftones said this, and he believes in that, and he, you know, it's like I almost feel bad because it's you get to a point, and same thing happened to the NBA player he had on, and what's his name? Terrence, I forget. No,
Flat Earth.
You know, Charlie. What's who's the NBA?
Terrence Ross.
Terrence Ross, yes. So when he had him on, same thing. Like you can't openly talk about things because if you say anything, even if it's just on a podcast and people are asking you about whatever it may be, you know, even if it's flat Earth, and it happened to Kyrie Irving, right? He kind of entertained this idea that like, yeah, it kind of makes sense or whatever. Next thing you know, like everybody used it to just get for clickbait, and everybody's like, oh, he believes in flat Earth, he believes in that, you know. So you can't openly have these discussions. I think there's some benefit in somebody like myself, or, you know, who just like, nobody gives a shit what my opinion is, you know? So it's like, if I say that I believe in flat Earth, you know, it's not going to be headline news, you know? So it makes you, and when I've told the story before. So the guy from Sports Science, Dave, I don't know if you know the guy from Sports Science, on Sports Center, they always did those little sports science, little clips where they're like, kind of dissect what an athlete does and how he does it and all that stuff. Well,
okay. Yeah.
So his name's John Bernkus, and he was on my show, And I remember he was on, and at the end of the show, he's like, "Hey, we still recording?" And I'm like, "No." And I'm like, we're good. I'm like, "We're good to go." And then and so we're chit chatting, and he's like talking about all the conspiracy theories that he's interested in, and he's like, "Oh, I just can't talk about it. I can't openly talk about it." And I'm just like, how many people are like that, where they're just like they're self-censoring because of being pigeonholed. I mean, it's unfortunate that like even something like vaccines or whatever, maybe regardless where you stand on these issues, like the fact that we can't just have a discussion about like, okay, what do you think? And why do you think that? And then what do I think? What do I think about that? And just have a discussion about that. And, I've said it over and over again about how we can have diehard arguments about sports, and being from New England, there's plenty of those arguments that happen on a daily basis, about is Tom Brady the best quarterback, or who, whatever it is. And nobody says like, hey, you shouldn't have brought up sports. But if you bring up like anything else that's somewhat important, an important topic, people are like, oh, you shouldn't have brought that up. And it's like, wait, I don't get it. So we can argue about things that are meaningless and really don't have a real impact on our lives. But when we're discussing important topics, we should self-censor. I just think that's a huge issue.
Yeah, like I got a lot of respect for Stephen Carpenter, just because he could have been like, oh, I'm a vaccine skeptic, but he was like, no, I don't believe in dinosaurs. The Earth is flat. He just laid it all out there, And being in a popular band like Deftones, I feel like he kind of put it on the line a little bit. It's like he didn't care, and he ended up getting a ton of flack, which is so stupid, because I feel like today, they don't want anybody to have an open conversation with conflicting views or different opinions. It's either one way or no way. You got to have, it's not everybody has to agree.
Yeah, and you end up self-censoring or kind of not talking about certain things just because of the fear of possibly somebody blowing it out of proportion.
Yeah, getting canceled or getting.
Yeah, it's the left-right paradigm. Like we're all getting like propagandized to be on the left or the right. We can't be like somewhere in the middle, like talking about everything. We always got to pick a team, in order, and it's all because like the more teams we have too, the blacks, the Latinos, the white people, the Chinese, like all these people are getting compartmentalized, and then it's so much easier for the controlling measures to be implemented on them, because we don't talk because you're that, or because you believe in that, we can't have a conversation.
Yeah.
No. To me, the Union of the Unwanted is, to me, one of the ultimate ideas, just because you have guests on and none of y'all really agree with everything, but y'all all share like a common goal of just trying to get the truth out and share viewpoints. And that's
why, and that's why that show to me was such a important project, because like Dave said, in our personal lives, one thing I've always been kind of good at is trying to keep people together and like creating like small communities, and because I think it's necessary for our sanity. It's necessary. I enjoy being with other people from different backgrounds and different perspectives, to have my ideas challenged, to share my ideas, to just talk and have fun and communicate. And so when the Union Unwanted thing started, I kind of felt like I was taking what I was doing in my personal life and doing the same thing, but with podcasting and YouTubers and the alternative media community. Throughout the years, I've done a really good job of just networking. You meet somebody. I've always been super nice to everybody, so I've never burned any bridges. I'm always super nice to people. So that's why so many people from different perspectives are willing to come on the show. We had Roger Stone on a Union of the Unwanted show, and then we had Greg Palast on like the show before or after that, which is a super left, journalist and author. And but that's, to me, that was important. It's like, I don't want to create an echo chamber. I want people to realize like, this isn't an echo chamber. We can all respectfully talk to one another. I mean, even I don't know who said it. I wish I could give him credit, but like somebody said before, like even an idiot says something intelligent sometimes. It's true. Like you can never just disregard somebody because you don't like their view on one specific thing or a couple of things. They might have something really interesting that's still of value that can really help. And you know, so to me that's really important. And also that whole theory helps with like myself, because when I started the show with Dave, it was super easy for us to talk to one another because we did it all the time, even though hitting record did make you a little nervous. But when I started having guests on, I remember having like the panic attacks of like, you know, just feeling like an idiot. I'm just like, oh my God, like who am I to talk to this person or talk to Dan Carlin or talk to Lee Camp or who, you know, Daniele Bignelli. But I remember Daniele Bignelli, and I don't remember if this was one of the shows that Dave and I were on together when he was co-hosting, but I remember him saying this, and I've said this on the show a bunch of times since, like information for information's sake. Like if you just know how to regurgitate information, that's not really that important, you know, like it really doesn't get you anywhere. What's important is finding out how that information can help you better understand yourself or the world around you. And that's what's important. So like, I always found myself, like, I'll go to, like Dave was saying, and I'm like, many of you guys know, like I'll go down certain rabbit holes. I'll have a researcher who I like on this topic, then a researcher on that topic. And I'm not very good at memorizing like the specific information, but I'm really good at taking away the lesson I learned from that information and keeping that, you know. And so I'll be like, listen, this is where I stand on this, you know, this is kind of what I've learned, and this is where I stand. I have this perspective or this opinion. I might not be able to regurgitate all the information that got me to this opinion, but is that really important? You know, I think it was Mark Twain who said, why memorize something you can look up? And it's true. Like, why take up, you know, space in my brain for something I can just Google, you know, or at least you used to be able to Google. Now I have to go on some alternative, but, you know, but why do that? You know, to me, it's much more important to the lesson you learn from that information. It's like reading a book or listening to a song or doing, consuming anything from a content creator that, or a artist that's thought provoking. Like what you take from that journey of listening to a song, or, you know, you watch a movie that makes you kind of rethink your life or whatever, like what you gain from that is much more important than those specifics. So once I kind of started understanding that, like, okay, maybe I can't regurgitate something and information the same way like some of the really intelligent people online can do, or people who do lectures or whoever it may be, or even some of the people that I interview. But if I can kind of just share like a rough idea of like, okay, this is what I think and this is why, and then, you know what, you all have a smartphone in your phone, I mean in your pocket, so go Google it yourself. You know, I don't need to regurgitate stuff. I think what you can take from those things are much more important. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say here?
For sure.
You guys are just being nice because it's my 300th.
Just to derail everything you said here, I love what you said. It's I agree. I can never. I'm listening to a podcast. I'm trying to tell someone I know. It never goes well. To begin with, I have to, Adam, keep your mic closer in your podcasts. I can't hear you. And Trutzilla, I love the Skeptical podcast. I went after that and listened to a few Skeptical episodes, and thank you for that.
Awesome, Barney. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, Dave, this is what's
and
oh yeah, go
one
ahead.
more thing.
Yeah,
and John, Ethereum, are we going all in or no?
Crypto,
You're like a crypto guy, something like that.
John, I think that was for you, bud.
Oh
yeah.
You know what? I think Ethereum is a great tool to build things on, and it's probably going to be used for a long time. So it's going to go a lot higher than what it is now. That's just my opinion. But same with a lot of other cryptocurrencies. You know, like it's going to be you know, an increase because there's going to be more and more people coming into the field. There's still like tiny markets. Like Ethereum is tiny minuscule to any other market that's, you know, out there in the world. You know, Bitcoin just were able to like breach the silver market capitalization, so it's as big as the whole silver manufacturing and stocks and all that market. So Bitcoin has just like gotten there. Like Ethereum will get there in maybe like a year or 2 or 3. Like becoming, as big as Bitcoin. But at that point, Bitcoin might be as big as gold, like the size of the gold market. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of, yeah.
One more question. I have this book here, like Charlie's book, and Jeff is telling me to buy Monero. I have two something about that.
Yes, Monero
Is that's a good investment? I'm very confused about the
Well,
crypto.
for me, like Monero is not an investment per se. Like I buy and hold it for like anonymous transactions. That's why I really like it. So like that's the number one thing. Like I don't care about I don't really care about the dollar price, the Norwegian kroner price, the Canadian dollar price of these cryptos. At one point, I could just go and buy something with it, and I don't care about like what the local currency is. It might have disappeared, for other reasons. So like personally, I don't care about that. But number one reason why I hold Monero is just for privacy and being able to transact like you have cash in your hand.
Yeah, he's talking about that, but like in my case, I'm on what the one sec, Binance, and if I exchange stuff on Binance, I guess even if I exchange Monero, the Binance register that, so the thing
Well,
about
they will feed the transaction, yeah. So like
so the point about Monero being you can't see whatever I do, I guess
well, they can't see what
can
you
see.
do with it, but they can see that you got into it. The thing with like when it comes to like exchanges, I haven't used an exchange the last 3 years. I used to. So I'm like totally off of them. Like I just have my private coins. I have like special ways of like buying like from fiat to other currencies. So I'm not a trader. Like I just buy and hold these things because I believe in a lot of them. So yeah,
That's so fucking hard. I've tried to learn about that, making my own fucking hard drive, have my own bank.
There's a lot to like. You'll have to come and join the Discord. Like, are you on the Discord group that me and Tim has, or no?
No, I have your podcast I'm listening to.
Yeah, if you look up theeconomictruth.org, like you can find Discord server there. Like we discuss this all the time, so you could just throw questions at. Like, there's tons of experts there. So yeah.
Okay, I'll jump in.
Dave.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ricky.
No, I was just gonna say, my wife texted me. They're like, "Hey, Dave's on the call, so the kids want to say hi to him."
Put him on. Put him on.
There they are. Hey, so for some, Dave's my son's godfather. Hi. Hey, G. We're talking. You want to give us some economic advice on crypto, kids?
Can we talk to Dave?
Yeah. Can we talk?
Hi, Dave.
Hi, what's going on, Gia?
Good.
What's up, Ricardo?
Good.
You guys behaving? Stomp your feet really hard so it makes noise on Daddy's studio.
You have to mute.
Oh, you're not gonna go down. You're gonna go up.
Now they're speaking my language. All this cryptocurrency and stuff. I don't know what they're talking about, but I understand Ricky and Gio.
Yeah, they love Dave. Dave's very good with kids.
They're awesome kids. They're awesome kids. I can't believe they're watching your show.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming my wife said that Dave was on, so they wanted to come on and say.
We're getting Swedish F-bombs dropped left and right over here, and but then again, we say a lot worse in front of them all the time, so it's nothing new.
I'm not too strict with the whole swearing thing. I just try to explain to them that, one thing actually, if you go back to our earlier shows, one thing we talked a lot about, especially when my wife was pregnant with my son, was being a parent. And Dave's has an amazing relationship with his daughter, and which I was always envious of and hoped that I would have a similar relationship with my kids. And so I got a lot of good advice from Dave. And it's funny, one of the things he said on a early podcast, and I don't know what number it was, and I wouldn't tell you anyways because they sucked, and I don't want you going back and listening.
It's got to be a single digit.
But I remember him talking about how, like, you know, if you tell your kid not to do something and you know, you don't have a good reason to tell them not to do something, and you know, if they can kind of, I guess debate would maybe be the wrong word, but kind of make a argument, you know, then you entertain that. And I thought it was like such a interesting way of looking at things, where, you know, now with my kids, I'm the same way, where I'm like, okay, I'm telling them to do something, but if they have a good reason to why, you know, they should be able to do it, or why I should give them permission to do it, then let's talk about it. And I'm open to being wrong, and I'm open to that whole thing. So I think a lot of parents have that whole, like, do what I say, not what I do, and be stern. And, you know, I've even had conversations with friends of mine. One of my friends, Damar, he was like, oh, you know, I don't think your kids should be your friends, you know? And I'm like, really? I'm like, why not? You know, and I'm like, you can be friends with your kids. And I get it. Like, there's this thin line where, and I know there's a lot of people who are parents on, a lot of people who are parents on, you know, on this call, and because of it, they kind of can relate to it. But I think that you can still be strict when need be, and be their friend, you know? So it's like, I know it's a balancing act. It's kind of hard at times because you're worried that maybe they won't take you as seriously because you have that friendship. But I've kind of, you know, I don't seem to have that problem. I think that, you know, they know when I don't get upset often. So when I do get upset, they know, like, okay, Dad's actually angry. But most of the time, I was never a big fan of rules growing up. I know Dave has said that too. You know, he was never a big fan of too many rules. So I try to limit, you know, how many rules, and, you know, and let them be kids and enjoy themselves. And especially during this whole lockdown thing, I felt like it was more important than ever to make sure they were constantly smiling and enjoying themselves. And I wasn't over and beyond, like, strict, and really also making sure that any stress that we had in our personal lives, they weren't sensing it. You know, of course they sense it, but as little as possible, you know. So anybody want to add to that? I know there's a lot of parents on this call.
Like me and my dad, we were always best friends. I was very blessed, you know, until he passed away last year. You know, we always had great conversations, you know. I worked for him, you know, when I was like 12 years old. And so I never, you know, for me, like, having that relationship was extremely powerful, like, for my trajectory or where I've gone in life.
I think that you don't need rules and you can be friends. I know my dad was my confidant, but it was more of respect. You respected him. And with my kids, what I would say to them is, I didn't care what grades they got, as long as they, at the end of the day, could look in the mirror and say to themselves, they tried their best. So it didn't matter the outcome. Were they happy with themselves? Did they have self-worth and self-confidence because of their own God-given abilities? And did they try their best? And, you know, it's interesting. You mentioned something about universities. My son started a podcast. I think he was 12, and he called it Breakthrough Success. And I think he's like 650 or 700 episodes. And he basically got people on his show, and he was young. He was not even a teenager and then a teenager. And he wanted to get them on the show to learn about business. So he went to Fordham University and he graduated finance, but he learned everything through his podcast. And he wanted Seth Godin, I think his name is. He's a marketing guy that wrote so many books, like The Purple Cow. So he actually emailed him and said, like, I'm 12. I'd love for you to come on my podcast. And the guy came on. And look at that, at the time, it was his idol. And he has learned so much, and that got him speaking engagements and all this other stuff. So I travel with my sons who are in their 20s to all of their conferences and their presentations. So I feel you can be strict, but you can be friends. And if you're too strict, they may rebel. So you really want to get them into that executive functioning of, if they've done something wrong that annoyed you when they were young, I wouldn't put them into timeout. What does that do? Why do you think I'm upset? And what could you have done differently? like try to get executive functioning strategies going at a younger age.
Well, I want to give you a lot of credit for pretending 300 episodes for a 35-year-old is a big deal when your 12-year-old started a podcast and is at like 700. Like,
well, he's not 12 now, so it took a while.
But that's still very impressive.
He's in his 20s. But
yeah, I'll you know, when he gets to 1,000, you know, I'll go on and celebrate with him and then cry a little bit. But I, you know, one thing that was always fascinating and scary as I was becoming a parent, like thinking about how many adults you know that have certain things about them, you know, like either they don't like something, they do like something, they have a hard time being social or have some anxiety about something, and it's all based on like adolescence, you know, some trauma they dealt with. And it seems like when, as adults, right, like if we deal with some type of trauma, we do a much better job, I think, of dealing with that. You know, not in all cases, but I think, you know, on average, if you deal with some type of trauma as an adult, you're mentally better prepared to deal with it. But even the smallest trauma as a child, and even certain things that you don't even know may cause trauma, stays with them forever. And I think it was Brian Callen who said, like, we're all going to fuck up our kids one way or another. We're just, you know, and in some cases you don't even know, you know, that something you're doing was going to mess them up, but you're just trying to mess them up as little as possible. And I'm like, yo, you're kind of right. Because it's like, you never know how their psyche is handling certain things. You know, you might think like, okay, I can be strict with my kid, but maybe with that personality you can't be, or maybe I can be less strict, or maybe, you know, doing this or doing that, or whatever type of trauma or anxiety we have about something, they end up dealing with. I mean, there's that I think Rupert Sheldrake, the scientist, when he was on my show, he talked about that paper, Inheriting Father's Fears. And it was about how that study with mice, which I'm sure some of you guys have heard of it, where they would spray the scent and then shock the mouse. And it was a scent that they would never run into in a natural world, completely synthetic scent that they created. And then for 2 generations afterwards, every time they sprayed that scent with mice, so it was the children of that mice and then the grandchildren of that mice, they would have the same type of panic attack, because what they were doing, and I kind of skipped a step, they would spray the scent and they wouldn't shock it anymore. But it's similar to like an invisible fence for a dog. You know, you put on the collar and they think that they're going to get shocked. So it's same type of thing where every time they would smell that scent, they thought they're going to get shocked, so they would have this panic attack. Well, for 2 generations after, they would have the same type of experience without ever being shocked, you know, and obviously this was a synthetic scent, so they would never have run into it in the natural world. And so you think about like, and my point of this, it's like just talking about child trauma, like we think that like our kids inherent, you know, it's this whole nature versus nurture debate, and it's like they inherit like our eye color and hair color and these type of things. But even trauma, you know, there's so many other deeper things that I think our kids inherit that we're not even aware of.
Can I come in here? I have a question for Nancy. You have older kids. Rick and me have younger. I have 2 kids, 1 and 3 years. When do you start red pilling? I mean, I sound like your kids are not to sound, how do I say this, in the system? Can I say that? Are they in the system? Have you red pilled them or not? Or
I
are you
think
letting
once
them
they can
go?
walk, you let them listen to Alex Jones, I think.
So I used to work at Goldman Sachs, and when my youngest son got sick, there were no doctors that could help him. So I left to figure out how to really save his life. And I didn't like biology. I went for functional medicine and nutrition, and I got all my degrees and did all my research. So when they didn't even understand what I was talking about, I would say, I'm giving you this because this helps your liver, or this is a neurotransmitter and it's going to open up your brain cells. And I didn't really care that they didn't understand me. I felt that the brain was there and it could absorb. And then I would teach them why I was doing anything, like even for school. I wish I had homeschooled them, actually. but I would always do bridge learning between each grade, like from second to third. I would go buy these books and we would do like 3 hours of work in the summer, and then they could go play and they had to go outside. And then when they were, I think they were 9 and 10, I was going into New York City to a conference, and it was in the summer. And I said, I'm going to this conference. Do you want to come with me? And it was a July day. I said, if you don't, just do the 3 hours of work that are going to be here. But if you do come, you have to wear khakis and a long sleeve shirt, like, you know, going to church. So I said, they're not going to come. I said, plus I'm leaving at 6 because I'm driving into the city. And they said, we're going to come. And I said, okay, great. And now I'm driving into New York City saying, oh my God, can I bring them in? Do you have to be 18 or older to be at this conference? I was like, what the hell, I'm here. I found the spot. It was by 42nd Street. We went in there. They ate it up. So I was like, oh, I guess this is what they say the real world is. And they got in all the photographs because they were like, who are these children at this conference? And it was a business conference. So I think that unknowingly spearheaded, because then my son wrote all these books on social media and everything else. And it was, why not? Like, don't be afraid. And it was in a safe environment, and they got on stage and they asked, why are you here? And from there, they started a nonprofit, and they tried to help inner city kids of how to become entrepreneurs or come up with an idea. Everybody has ideas. Come up with an idea and see if you could turn it into a business. And they ran that program at Fordham University. And it was just like, I think that if you expose them to, and personally, I was like, oh God, I wouldn't want to do that. Like, I like lots of people want to live through their kids. I don't want to live through anybody but myself. But if you can expose them at a young age to things that you know they'll be safe because you'll be with them. For instance, like podcast movement. There's this annual conference of podcasters. And so my son got really into it, and then he wrote to them and submitted some speech thing. And next thing I know, I'm going taking pictures, videos of my little kid doing a podcast presentation at this podcast thing. You know, present opportunities. I would always encourage parents to present opportunities to their children to be around like-minded individuals. Listen to the podcast and don't say, oh, we'll wait for them to be in middle school or high school or college. You know, life is real at every stage. And get them to listen to audible books and things that you can then explain. I think it's great. Like Ricky, you touch upon so many different topics and you have so many people on. Have them listen to little tidbits, you know, or say, hey, like if you're discussing it with your wife and they're there and you say, or like I would say, what did you get from that? And what they got from it and what I got from it were totally two different things that I learned from them. And we all learn from each other. And then at Goldman Sachs, we used to have weekly conferences. So I would say, hey, what are you guys doing this week? You want to have a conference like what I used to do at Goldman? And we would talk about different ideas. It's funny because my husband would come home from work and he'd look at us, too much brain power. And he would just go right to bed. He was like, I'm not having any part of this. I'm tired. But their creative minds, like find out what your kids are creative about. And then give them an opportunity to explore further. If it's art or writing a book or even podcasting, you could do that young at any age. So I would say just explore different topics with them and then play too. Like, you know, have work life, you know, we go to baseball games or we play outside, like do physical stuff as well. So you could definitely start them young. And they do see the difference. Like when they were in university, they saw that was more brainwashing and they really didn't want to go. But I was like, well, you started, finish your degree. Because for me, it was a big deal when I was young, but it's changed now. So I don't know, did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. I had a kind of wrong impression. I felt like you had let them go, but you obviously didn't. So yeah,
I think get your kids to think. I mean, I see my kids sometimes repeating what I say, and I'm always like don't just repeat it just because I'm saying it. Like let's talk about it. Like this is why I feel this certain way, and if you agree with me, great. But if you don't agree with me, like don't just repeat what Dad's saying, and just adopt my perspectives. I want you to really question things. And I remember talking to James Corbett about this before, and he talked, and we have kids similar age, and we're talking about being fathers. And he talked about, he's like, that's what he wants to do with his kids. It's like, just get them to think, get them to question things, and then everything else will fall in place. Too often, especially like you saw during this election year, and really every election year, where people will like force their beliefs on their kids. And I think it's a way of brainwashing. I mean, you're really, you're pushing your beliefs on that child. And I mean, who knows? Maybe your beliefs are right. Maybe, maybe you have thought it out, but you're not giving that child a chance to have his own beliefs and to kind of explore ideas. I was kind of lucky. At first I remember I was kind of like looking back and like, oh, my parents don't have any opinions on anything, political or what's going on in the world or whatever. But it kind of worked in my advantage because I didn't have something I had to break out of. It was like I was open to explore all these ideas, and they were all new to me, and I didn't know which one made most sense or which one made the least sense. And I was kind of just on this journey of exploring ideas. So, but yeah, I think getting your kid to think is super important. And one thing you see people entertaining a lot more now, I remember I had Carrie McDonald, the author of Unschooled, and in late 2019. And when I had her on my show, like it wasn't, a lot of people it wasn't a show that got a whole lot of downloads. But after that, like all this discussion about, homeschooling and unschooling got more and more popular during the lockdown. And I was sending that show to so many people. I'm like, check out the show, check out the show. When I recorded it, wasn't as relevant as it is now. And so I do think that there's, when you have a very, a school system that rewards people who can just regurgitate information. Yeah, it's rewarding financially. You can get ahead financially because you can get a good job and, financially get ahead, but it doesn't make the most creative thinkers. It doesn't make, Dave knows. And I've said this on the show before, like when I go out with my friends, you sit down, and if you don't know what anybody makes, for money, you don't know what anybody does for a living, and you just sit down and talk, and you talk about life stuff, you talk about whatever it may be. Some of the most interesting friends of mine aren't people who make the most money or have the most impressive job. It's just people who are the most impressive thinkers. And so I think we've kind of created a system that kind of rewards people who can really regurgitate stuff. But like we always say, like there's a difference between street smart and book smart. And when we say that, what we're really saying is that, book smart means you're really good at regurgitating information, but it doesn't mean you have those problem solving skills. It doesn't mean you have, you're a creative thinker. And when you look at a lot of like business owners or artists, they're not people who went really far in college. They're not, you look at musicians, you look at, Joe Rogan, he talks about how he went to college just to make his mom happy, but he didn't learn anything and he couldn't wait to get out. So I don't think it contributed to his success. I think, a lot of people, they're just people who are curious people who look at things from outside the box. I know Montessori schools are kind of like that. I know, Dave, you have some experience with that. They seem to be a little bit more in that direction of like exploring a child's passion and what they like more. I mean, I say it all the time, find something you love and pursue that, pursue that to its fullest. Like, this idea of like, one size fits all, like go get a high paying job, get the white picket fence, get that brand new Mercedes, and it'll lead to happiness. It's kind of a book of lies. And I should have ended with a question, shouldn't I?
Hey, Ricky, man, I just want to hop on real quick.
Yeah.
Say, dude, like I got so much love and respect and appreciation for you, man. Like even before we got started, like, you were so, receptive and open to, I had a couple questions and then just supportive all through our little journey here, man. So congratulations so much on the 300 episodes, dude. Like your body of work is just monumental, man. It's so impressive, and you're so inspiring, and that ripple effect that you set out to do, man, it's happening, man. And there's people that are contact us that say the same thing now, which is a trip. And really, you're the progenitor of like so much positive stuff in the world. So just a lot of love and appreciation, man.
For sure. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Ricky.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I appreciate
Before you guys go, you are the ripple effect from Ricky to you. From whatever. Too drunk to talk.
Yeah.
Truth tell, I love you guys.
I love you too, man.
you too,
It's
man,
cool
for
to actually
sure.
meet people
Definitely.
that are in it with us, dude.
And
You're in with us.
And he's from
It's-
Finland. So
It's
he's
so cool.
Yeah,
It's
awesome.
So awesome.
The experience sitting here talking to you guys is so surreal.
It's
And
awesome,
it's,
man.
You know what's funny, and it's funny because like so Dave, it's funny having Dave on this call because again I just started with me and a friend talking, and now when like when I talk to Truthzilla and they talk about me being an influence of theirs, and and I tell people all the time, like, start a podcast, contact me, I'll help you, and I've stayed true to that every step of the way. Anytime somebody contacts me, I will give them advice. I will help them in any way possible. Adam from Deborah Gets Red Pilled, same thing. He contacted me. I helped him, try to give him any advice that could help, and always trying to motivate people to get going. I've even had people who contacted me, did a couple episodes, and I have to reconnect with them, and be like, hey, you're on episode 5 for like 3 months. Don't be lazy. Go. I'm like, do you need help with booking people? I'm like, I'll help you. I'll tell you how to get a hold of people. Same thing with Matt. Matt started a podcast not too long ago too. So same thing where it's just like this show has become the example of the ripple effect. It really has. But it's funny because I feel like just a person who just talking and recording it, and then when people say, oh, you're a OG, or you're one of the you're somebody, they look at the show like, oh, you're one of the ones who've been around for a while. Like, I thought I was late to the game when I got started, and I know a lot of people now feel the same way. But like I always say, like, you can never have enough podcasts. When Charlie Robinson, who was just on the show, he was writing books and he was thinking about starting a podcast. And I'm just like, dude, Charlie, start one. He's like, oh, like, we need another podcast. But like, Charlie's book right there. And I remember telling him, like, you can never have enough people who are willing to just explore ideas and challenge ideas and do these type of have these type of conversations. And there's Charlie's other book. And I think people really appreciate just sincerity. I mean, I never claim to be anything that I'm not. I always try to be super honest. I fuck up on words all the time. I get statistics wrong probably more often than I'm aware of. But I think people really see that I'm open to exploring ideas. I don't have a agenda, and I'm just somebody just like everybody else on this journey. And I really get a lot from these discussions. Like I always say, like, these long podcasts I do, I always take something away from them. So it's not just the listener who's taking something from it, but I'm on this journey, and I could come away from these conversations being like, oh shit, I didn't think about that, or I never looked at it from that perspective. So it's a journey for everybody, and that's what makes it fun. It's like we're all a part of it, and that's why that other show, the Union of the Unwanted, I think people really feel like it's a community. And that's one thing that has always been important to me, is like create a community, help each other out. And the nice thing about podcasts, it's unlike very other type of platforms where, like, you can subscribe to my show, you can subscribe to everybody else's show who's on the call, and none of us feel like we're competing with one another. So because of that, we're willing to help each other. And I forget who said it. I'd love to give him credit. I think it was the Airy Bros who said, like, when we all do better, we all do better. It was like something simple like that, right? A simple quote. Like, I'm like, oh, but you're right, man. Like, you're right. Like, when we all do better, we all do better. It benefits all of us. So I think it's awesome. And I think people appreciate it. People appreciate when you help them out. I'm sure, Scott, you were talking about people contacting you guys. Those people who are now starting their podcast because of your help, they're forever going to be appreciative of your help. And they're going to be fans for life. They're going to be like, hey, these guys were big, influences of mine. So I think behind the scenes, we forget that we all had a little help, like, nobody did it on. We look at these success stories and we like to believe, like, oh, that person just was luckier than I was, or that person was. And a lot of times it's just like, oh, they were overnight, they were famous, or they're successful. Well, if you really dig deep in a lot of people's stories, you find out, like, it wasn't overnight. It was a lot of, like, continuing pursuing it, having failures. And the difference between, like, the Ripple Effect podcast and maybe another podcast that only did 7 episodes or 100 episodes, it was the fact that I just continued doing it. And I had a lot of moments in my, doing this podcast where I'm like, this is going to be the podcast that like I think is really going to take off, or really going to take off. And I would look at like download numbers or whatever, and I'd be like, I'm not doing as well as I thought I'd be. And then after a while, I'm like, who gives a shit? I'm like, I'm touching some people, and it doesn't matter if it's one person, it's worth it. And then I came to the conclusion that like even when I had these like seeds of doubt planted in my head, like I would feel like something's missing if I stopped doing it, because that was the reason why I started it, because I felt like something was missing. So even if nobody was listening, I felt like I was at least trying to do something. I was attempting to do something. And you never know who you influence. You never know how like which person is listening to Truthzilla or Deborah Gets Red Pilled or Nancy or Tease or Matt or whoever it may be. And you guys give them the motivation to start their own show or pursue something else, or you expose them to a new idea that ends up changing the world. Who knows? I mean, all the most influential people in the world, like Martin Luther King or whoever it may be, those people were influenced by lesser known people. They read a book that that was written by an author we're not aware of. They had a conversation with an uncle or whoever it is that had we've all had those deep conversations with relatives or close friends that it just changes your life. For some reason, it sticks with you forever. Like they had those conversations with people that they didn't know were influencing somebody who changed the world. So we can all be doing that. So I think it's important to just understand like the difference between myself who gets to 300 episodes, or Nancy's son who gets to 3 billion episodes is that we didn't stop. We just continued doing it. We kept pursuing it, and it's not coincidental that usually luck finds the people who work hard and are passionate and really pursue those things.
Ricky, I have a question for you. Where do you see this in a few years? Do you ever want or have a desire to bring this to like an annual conference?
We've talked about that briefly, like doing like a Union of the Unwanted type of like just conference thing where everybody would just come hang out, maybe have like live podcasts, do a Q&A with guests or with people that are there, participants and stuff. And yeah, so we've talked about it. I mean, it sounds like a lot of work, which I would definitely need some help. But the nice thing about this community is that a lot of people do help. People are willing to help. So
how are we going to get together if no one in this community will get vaccinated?
Yeah, man. Get on the airplane.
No one's getting on an airplane.
Ricky, why don't you just check with Autonomy, see if they'd be willing to help you out with doing that? Because they've done that before with like Red Pill and stuff. It seems like they're there to help you do that thing.
Yeah, Richard Grove's awesome. He's a friend that I've gotten really close to throughout the years from podcasting. He was he was on some years ago, and then found out that he lived in Hartford. He moved to Hartford, so I'm like, hey, that's only like 30-40 minutes for me. Let's hang out. So then we end up hanging out. Super nice dude. And yeah, he's really good at that. He spoke at the Red Pill 2019. I was actually at Red Pill 2019 just to hang out and kind of meet people. And yeah, I mean, talking to somebody like that, he would definitely be the person to go to put something like that together and help out and organize stuff. But yeah, I would love that, because again, like we talked about before, so many people, so I do these podcasts where people aren't aware. I just recently, this is actually the second time I did episode 2 of doing this. But what I started doing was on my Patreon page, I started doing podcasts with my Patreon supporters. I'm like, hey, I'll send you a Zoom link. I'll do a podcast. You guys can jump in. We can all connect. We can talk. And a lot of people really enjoyed not just connecting with me, but connecting with each other. So I think that's a big part of it, is like a lot of times you do feel like you're on an island. You're the only one who's fascinated with this topic or that topic. And so to create something like the Union of the Unwanted Expo or whatever, I think it would be awesome, because a lot of people who are into a lot of the same topics are see ya guys, and could connect and talk and really just meet people who are like-minded. I mean, that's kind of the beautiful thing with the internet, is that it does connect a lot of people like this, and people can find those little communities online. But I think meeting people in person is drastically different. I hardly get nervous on the podcast anymore, but at the Red Pill Expo, I was nervous to talk to everybody. And there's tons of people there who have been on the show and I've talked to for hours. And I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I should go up to them, talk to them and introduce myself. Will they remember me? You know, it's like, I just felt like such a nerd. I'm like, oh, you know, but it is nice when you do sit down and talk to them. And I think that's the other thing you learn too, is like, everybody's just a human being. You meet them, it's like we all go through like this imposter syndrome. You hear about celebrities, musicians, actors, actresses talk about this whole imposter syndrome where like you get all this success and fame and everybody looks up to you, but you don't feel like you deserve it. You're like, I'm just a person. Like I don't feel any different than it's kind of like I was saying before, like I don't feel any different than episode 1 or 2 when I was with Dave, just kind of just BSing. But now people look at me and it's like, oh, you're one of those guys from the community. You're one of those established podcasts. And I'm just like, I guess, I'm still just kind of talking to people and recording it and hoping people get something out of it and I get something out of it. But you do go through that kind of imposter syndrome where you're like, I don't like, why are people looking up to me? Like I haven't done shit, So I think we all kind of deal with those internal dilemmas. But I think having something like an expo, connecting people and networking and people in this community are so willing to network and help each other out. I mean, it's amazing how many times I'm like, hey, this person. I'm like, how do I get a hold of them? I'm like, oh, I don't want to step on your toes. I don't want to. I don't like asking people for help with anything. I'll definitely go down every avenue first. But if I'm ever like, damn, man, I'm like, I would love to get a hold of this person. And I ask somebody, it's amazing how willing they are to help. So that's awesome. Another thing that's funny about in podcasting, especially some of you guys that are getting into it now, you're going to find there's going to be people that you're sure do not want to come on your podcast because you'll contact them over and over again and you can't get a hold of them. And then out of nowhere, you'll get somebody saying, hey, I'm the agent or manager or the publisher for this person. They want to come on your show to talk about their new book. And I'm like, I've been trying to contact this guy for like 3-4 years and have had no luck. So that will happen too. People are busy. You can't, I never take it personally when people don't get back to me or whatever. But I remember when Dave was on the show, that's why I'm so grateful for the Jason Burmesses and the Douglas Ruskoffs and the James Corbett's who were willing to come on so early when we started the show, and Dr. Brzezinski, another one, awesome, person that I was just so amazed was willing to come on early in this whole journey. But I never took it personally, and I would just write a lot of emails and I would try to go on their websites, their Twitter accounts, YouTube. So for people listening, if you're looking to get a hold of people, explore every avenue. Sometimes I find a author had a website for an old book that had contact information that now his new website doesn't have. And I'll go down that rabbit hole and be like, oh, let me email him from this email address. So you try everything and you can't take it personally. People are busy, but you'll be amazed how many people are willing to come on, especially if you're sincere and you really just want to explore ideas. And so, yeah, I mean, and just keep doing it. Dave, one show that we talk about from time to time is Adam's show, Deborah Gets Red Pilled. The title is what the show's about. His mother-in-law. It's a hilarious concept because it's. I can't believe everybody says we can't believe that Deborah actually sits down for these. Like she's such a just amazing person to be able to go along with this journey with Adam. But he has a mother-in-law that is completely like mainstream media, like watches all the mainstream media, believes everything that's on TV. And so he has a podcast where he sits down with her and a guest and they try to red pill her. Like they'll talk about, has a guest on, and we talked, I don't know if it was a couple hours, but it was so fascinating. The fact that she was willing to come on and actually explore for an hour or 2 hours, completely different perspectives, from her own. And so how is that show going, Adam? Is she are you getting through to her? Because I know on when I was on, you talked about like, so I feel like I'm getting through to you, and then the show's done and you're back to watching CNN and it's like we're starting all over again. Are you still going through that?
Yeah, she's getting a little bit better. She's like pretty unplugged from the media. I think she knows the whole pandemic lockdown is, I think she thinks it's all bullshit. I think she's getting a little bit stir crazy because her husband's like full on into it, like hasn't left the house since March.
Wow.
So like I think she's in a tough spot, and she is not confrontational at all, probably less confrontational than your wife. And so like she's just stuck in a bubble. She lives in Marin County, California, you know, like she's stuck in this limousine liberal bubble. Like the definition of like coastal liberal elites is what she's around and has been for the better part of her adult life. So I think she's getting woken up, but she's kind of stuck because she doesn't like venture out and have like community like this, like that I had to go find because I couldn't find anybody that was I was really friends with, you know. But she makes great strides, and then she'll take a step back every once in a while. Like on our last show, she talked about that woman Marjorie Taylor Greene, is that her name? The woman from the QAnon congresswoman from Georgia. And she said something about like directed energy weapons and mentioned the Rothschilds name in it, and then like the corporate media like jumped all over her and like said that she had made statements that Jewish people can shoot lasers out of their eyes to start fires. And like, so Deborah brought that up on the podcast and presented it as truth. So we got in like a big argument about it over text, and my wife was just like, stop it. You're supposed to be eating dinner right now. FaceTime her and talk to her. So we did that, and it was a lot better. And I'm going to make her issue a retraction statement on the next episode. So.
That sounds like an awesome concept. That, you know, I know you guys are all anti-mainstream everything, but you know, that would rival Big Brother on TV. I think that's a hilarious idea. I think that's an awesome idea.
And
Thanks,
she's
man.
the sweetest person ever. It's like you cannot like talk to her for a couple hours and not like fall in love with her. You're like, she's just so sweet. Like I want to, you feel like you want to help her, you know, but
yeah, I've got memory holds coming on Friday to fuck her up with pedogate stuff. So
oh, and he goes deep into that. Yeah. He's the
I
man
can't
to
wait.
get for that. Yeah. He's but she's so when that, because this is something actually I always want to ask you. One, did you get any resistance from your wife who's like, hey, you're gonna fucking tear up the family? And two, like, did Deborah go into this as like, okay, Adam has this kooky idea, I'll entertain it because I'm locked at home and I don't want to leave? Or was she actually like, you know what, I want to explore these ideas? What was her intentions? Did she not take it seriously, or how did you talk her into it?
I think she just really, really loves me, believe it or not, and like wanted to help me, and like realized that it would like make me feel better. I was pretty bummed out about the state of the world when I started it. So, you know, that was kind of the what got it started, was just, you know, feeling shitty and needing to talk about it and not really having anybody to do it with.
That's and how has your relationship like grown, gotten closer? Or
yeah, we're way closer. I talk to her more than my wife does, and my wife talks to her every day, you know, so I think she likes me more than my wife, and so it's cool.
That's awesome. But doesn't that show?
I mean, I talk to my parents like once a month, you know, like at the most. So I'm not really close with my family. And, you know, like I met Deborah and her husband and their other daughter, like, you know, a week into dating my wife. And like, I have tattoos on my throat, you know, and they showed me nothing but like love and were like extremely nice to me the whole way through. They're a beautiful family. So, you know,
but that's so powerful, man. Like the fact that two people can care about each other so much and have completely different perspectives on just about everything else. And yet,
but she's coming around though. She really is. I turned her. It's working.
That's awesome. It's amazing that you're archiving this journey. Like you're literally archiving this journey of like her watching CNN 24/7, believing everything. But I think, you know, and I think I said this on this episode too, you can kind of chip away at things, you know, if you actually sit down and just have long form discussions, like eventually the truth is going to make more sense, you know, or some type of, you know, whatever trickery that they might be stuck in, you it's going to make less and less sense. You're going to say things and you're going to make logical sense. You're going to say, hey, like, well, this doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. Doesn't this make sense? Like what I'm saying. And little by little, as long as you're not threatening, which, is exactly what your show is. It's just, people who are just sharing ideas and talking. I think you can get through to people, and that's not per se that, to say that I have truth with a capital T, because I mean that's the other thing is like I think anytime we talk about like red pilling somebody or converting somebody, like I don't want people to get the wrong idea that it's about like, hey, I have it figured out and now I just need to convince you to that believe me because I have it figured out. It's just I think it's important to share those discussions, and if you talk long enough and if you discuss things and you share your perspectives long enough, eventually the ones that make the most sense will win. So I think that's why long form discussions are so important.
Yeah, and it's just the strange thing is that in this day and age is that she's came in with a different perspective but was still willing to listen. And like a lot of the early podcasts when she still wasn't waking up yet, she got like confronted with some like stuff that like if it happened to me, I would have felt like I was being attacked. Like we had that, like when you were on, we had that pretty emotional moment talking about like not getting the family together for Thanksgiving.
Dude,
and,
I got teary-eyed. I actually like, because I'm like I feel like I shouldn't be here listening to this conversation. Like I felt like it was such a personal discussion that I was eavesdropping on, or it, just because I could see how much it hurt you that possibly getting together with your family on Thanksgiving was being threatened by information that you felt like was BS. And to see you guys kind of discuss that, on the show, I think that's what makes the show so special is that honesty.
Yeah. And it's getting good, like,
and what happened on Thanksgiving?
I had a bunch of friends over and all the other family stayed at home. So I made extra sure that I had over the limit put down by Kate Brown, our governor, was broken. So yeah, we just had friends, and I know Deborah wanted to come, but she's kind of stuck. So
held hostage by her husband, it sounds like a little bit.
Yeah. So just recently I'm kind of burnt out on geopolitics and COVID and stuff like that. I still like to get back into it every once in a while. I'm trying to like the guests I have on to talk about politics. Like I want to come at it as like from a more like liberty perspective, but I also want to get into like more ancient mysteries. I'm really intrigued by like Tartaria and Hollow Earth and stuff like that. So when I do that stuff, instead of like learning about like kids getting molested by politicians, like I feel more spiritually fulfilled.
Yeah, I think we all kind of need that getaway from time to time to unplug. And
I'm going to cut you off here, Ricky. About that, listen to the last Higher Side chats.
Who was the guest?
You don't just listen to it. It's some random dude Greg found on the internet, and he's going to blow your fucking minds.
I'll definitely check that out. Yeah, Greg's very good at that. He's very good at finding Greg from the Hired Side chats. Some of you guys might know he's been on my show a few times, and he has a great podcast on conspiracies and spirituality, and he goes down, I mean, all the most crazy rabbit holes. There's no rabbit hole he won't go down in regards to like entertaining somebody on flat earth or hollow earth or whatever. And it's not that he subscribes to entities.
It's all in one. Every conspiracy I ever heard is going to build into this conversation they have. It's so fucking good.
I'm gonna have to check it out. Yeah.
It says the guy's name is Ari Asalin, the Electric Universe, Pyramid Portals, and our Martian Overlord.
Yeah, and Yeah, it's fucking awesome. I fucking loved it.
Well, we did a Unwanted show at the end of 2020, I believe, on UFOs and ETs and that spirituality and that type of supernatural stuff. And it was nice to get away from the the never-ending topic of coronavirus and these type of things. So it's yeah, I mean, you need to kind of unplug from time to time. That's why I'm probably slowly going to start listening to music more than ever. And I got out of sports for a long time, didn't watch a lot of sports. And now I get to kind of enjoy some of that stuff with the kids. And I've kind of found enjoyment in it again. And it's more, I mean, I know it's meaningless. Who wins or who loses doesn't mean anything, but it's nice to unplug. It's nice to kind of just hit reset and not think about these things 24/7. Cause I think it can affect your ability to smile and do what we all want to do and what in many cases we're fighting for, and that's just the freedom to enjoy life and to its fullest, because we know it's finite and you're only who knows how many years you have on this planet. So but thanks first, Ronnie, thank you for what time is it in Finland? You actually took a day off, a personal day.
Yeah, it's 4:30.
4:30 a.m. You are a trooper. And thank you everybody else who showed up. Matt, hey Matt, plug your podcast, because I know you just started, and I know that you're too nice not to plug your own show. So feel free to plug it, let people know what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks. It's the Resistance Chronicle, and we kind of just chronicle the Twitter feed, bookmark things all week long that we find interesting, and then just shoot the shit about it. It's a buddy of mine. We actually met in a Facebook group last March at the beginning of the whole pandemic thing. And by November, we said, let's do a podcast. And it was Black Friday. We sat down and recorded our first one. So we're just having a blast doing it. A couple of USB mics, my laptop and GarageBand. And yeah, we're just going to town, having fun. So this Friday is going to be the 8th episode. So we're just one episode above average, which is perfect.
Yeah, that's a big one to get
keep
to.
Going. And actually the week after, on the 12th, hopefully everything works out well. We got our first guest booked that's big into cryptocurrency and New Hampshire politics too. So we're going to have a little bit of conversation on both of those ends.
Awesome.
Hit me up, dude. I'd love to do something with you guys.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and just to echo what Dave said, what an idea. Getting your mother-in-law and bless her for going through that. Absolutely incredible. And I love hearing you talking about your chickens. And one thing that I do is my day job, I'm a chef. And so food's kind of very important to me and very important to my family, and gardening and all that stuff is kind of close to my heart. And with the chickens, Ricky, on the last one you did of these Ricky rants with the fans, I talked about how my town, we're not zoned for chickens, and myself and Eric, that's what I'm saying. But myself and my co-host Eric, we're actually going to start going after the town and just like, what the hell's up with this, and yeah, let's get chickens in everybody's yards and make sure these rain barrels aren't going to be taxed and all that crap. So
we're allowed to have 3. I have 17. So
good for you, man.
I'm killing my first batch of meat birds on Friday. So 10 of them.
I got no neighbors to my left. I got no neighbors to my right, and it's conservation land behind me. But still, just where I am, because I'm right outside of the historic district. It's a cemetery in the old town hall, and they call it the historic district. So you can't have chickens in the historic district because bird flu or whatever the hell it is. So it's just ridiculous, and we're gonna start attacking that. And yeah, really after this whole election and January 6th, and just seeing through all the bullshit, we're gonna kind of shift gears on the geopolitics and get into homesteading and teaching people how to can and ferment and pickle and all that. And yeah, man, I'd love to get in touch with you.
Let's do a chicken episode, dude.
For sure, man, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So if you go to the podcast, The Resistance Chronicle, you'll see from the pilot episode to now the kind of the evolution and where we're going to be bringing it. And it's going to be more based on self-reliance and what we can do to kind of help each other.
Yeah, solutions are super important to start, focusing on and talking about, and not only talking about problems, but solutions are equally as important. I mean, I think I read once that there's more chickens in the world than there are people. So maybe they're limiting chickens because of a chicken revolution. They're worried that what if they turn on us? Planet of the chickens type thing, could be scary.
You never know, some bionic birds or something like that. I think it's more just Tyson with the foot on the throat of a lot of influential people that are making these laws and signing these bills, and that's really what it is. And you're cutting into these big corporations' profits, and they don't want to see their bottom lines dwindle because they have to answer to a board of selectmen and their CEOs and all that. And this is crazy, and it's all stock market bullshit.
Yeah, marijuana was the same thing. We used to say all the time, like the reason why, you can't have marijuana, but you can go, get alcohol and buy a giant handle of vodka that could, kill yourself, is because you could grow it at home. It grows everywhere. It's easy to grow, and it cuts into the profit of the pill pushers. So it's, if they can't tax it, then, they don't want you doing it. If they can't get their cut.
Beyond the pill pushers, it cuts into the profits of DuPont and all these companies that are making all these products, these ropes and whatnot. Anything you see in Home Depot, it's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And what's crazy about it too is, like, a state that I live in New Hampshire, live free or die, right? You can't buy weed unless you have a medical card. There's only 2 shops, I think it is, in the whole entire state. But I could get in my car and drive into Massachusetts and go to Salisbury, which is right on the seacoast, and I can get 3-4 ounces and a bunch of vape pens and bring it back into New Hampshire, and nobody's the wiser. It's just the stupidest shit in the world, man. It's unbelievable, and it's got to stop. And hopefully my voice and my co-host Eric's voice will kind of get people to see some of that.
Awesome.
Can I ask before we end this? I'm in Finland, so I'm hopefully going next in a few months. I'm going to start with my potatoes and carrots and stuff. But I have a question about the chickens. Do you have to have a rooster, or are chickens going to give you eggs without a rooster?
It counts if you're going to film it or not.
No, you don't need a rooster unless you want them to give birth to baby chickens, not eggs.
Okay, so chickens just gives eggs even if they
Food
don't
eggs.
have a...
Food eggs are eggs that you eat are unfertilized.
Okay. I've been confused on that. So yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I have a plot of land at my parents' home. So
hey,
I'm
does it
going to
snow?
go...
Does it snow in Finland? Because one thing I learned, because my parents, you know this, right, Adam? They don't.
Yeah,
walk
they stop. They just like they don't
It's
freeze to
the
death, but
fucking
they stop.
I have like 50 cents of snow outside.
Chickens will not walk in snow. So when my parents would go back to Portugal, I would watch over the house, and so they'd be like, oh, at the end of the night, go in and close the coop, make sure all the chickens are in. And one time it snowed, and I get to their house, and all the chickens are like scattered all over the yard, and I'm just like trying to scare them, like, hey, get going, it's late, I want to go home, and they wouldn't move. So I literally called Portugal, and I'm like, listen, your chickens they literally will not move, and I'm not going to pick up every one. They had so many chickens. I'm like, I'm not going to pick up every single one of these chickens and put them in the coop. And they're like, oh yeah, they don't walk in snow. They like said it like it was obvious. And I'm just like, who knows these things? I'm like, but it's amazing how, like, even the most, my parents are farmers. They didn't go to high school, they went back in northern Portugal where they were raised, they went to like the 3rd grade and then dropped out and worked on a farm. So we think like, oh, we're much more intelligent than they are. And it's like the most basic things, for survival reasons, I'm not even aware of. And so it's amazing how even simple things, we all eat eggs, we all eat chickens, and we know absolutely nothing about them.
How did you get the chickens in? Did you pick them up?
Yeah, I did start picking them up, and then I think there was like I think there might have been 1 or 2 that I'm just like, okay, you're on your own, bud. You're hopefully there's no foxes or coyotes around. I'll see you in the morning, But now looking back, that was kind of cruel. Now that but it was dark. It was like cold and snowing, and I'm like, there's just too many chickens. I give up, you know. So I'm hoping he's still alive somewhere. Probably not, but you know, but knowing my parents. But it's funny how farmers have a relationship with. See, I had a very unusual for like compared to my wife's upbringing. My parents were farmers, so as a kid, I saw, and Dave knows, we grow up in a town that's full of, you know, old school Polish people and old school Portuguese people. So it's not uncommon to like have relatives that make sausage and kill animals at home. So I was really like desensitized to that whole thing. Like I was used to like, you know, going in my garage and randomly seeing a you know, a dead pig hanging upside down, or seeing my parents make sausage, or seeing them skin a rabbit. It was just, to me, it was just a normal way of life. And it wasn't until like other friends that weren't used to that would be like, oh my God, like that's crazy. Like that's how they kill a rabbit, you know? And I'm just like, yeah, well, how do you get your food? Don't you know, like somebody has to kill it, you know? So it's, but there, I had this weird thing where I didn't understand that my parents actually had even though they were killing the animals, they still loved them. Like they still went through the work of feeding them, taking care of them. I remember my parents had a husky that killed a couple chickens, and my parents were ready to kill the husky. I'm like, they're just chickens, but they're like, oh, you don't do that, you know? And they were all like, and I'm like, but weren't you going to kill the chicken? You know, but like, yeah, but we're going to eat it. You know, it was like, I was starting to understand that it's like, even though you raised them, they just had this understanding of like life eats life, you know, and that's just a part of the cycle. And just because they kill them and they eat them doesn't mean they don't appreciate it. And in many cases, I think they appreciate it even more because they raised it, they fed it, they took care of it, and then you know the next step, which we all know. But I think too many people just see packaged food and they forget, you know, in many cases that was living at some point, and you're skipping that whole step. You're so disconnected. You hear hunters talk about that, right? And I don't know, Dave or any of you guys say that when they kill something, like this appreciation for the meat because you saw it alive, you took its life, and then you really appreciate that food even more because you have that connection, you were part of that process, and you actually saw the thing alive than, you know, dead. So it's and then hunters talk about how like you feel real guilty if you shoot it and you miss and you harm the animal, right? Because, you know, now it goes in the woods, you might not be able to get it, it's going to die, and you're not using the food. So a lot of why you do it is because you're feeding yourself. It's not because, you know, some people do it as sport, as you know, but in most cases they really do it for their food and they appreciate it. So I think there is this weird thing where I think somebody who grows up in a city and is disconnected from farming, they think people who kill animals must not care for them or aren't passionate or sympathetic towards animals, and it's the complete opposite. But yeah, as we go down the line, Matt, Tease, you want to let people know? You might as well plug your show too, because you got an amazing show that you put a lot of hard hours into.
Yeah, so I just finished the episode that I needed to finish prior to the point of actually going out there and talking to more people about my show and actually like putting effort into marketing. And hold on, I'll grab one of these things. So I'll be right. I'm still talking. I'm still in the room. This fucking thing is one bag of what's going to be a total of 4,000 individual red pill scrolls that I walk around putting in people's mailboxes while I wear a giant rabbit suit. And this is one way in which I'm trying to reach out to people to get them to understand in a non-confrontational way that they're being lied to really severely. And so what I can do is talk very quickly about the framework of approach that brought me to this conclusion. I used to protest at Ground Zero on September 11th, wearing an American flag as a blindfold while holding out DVDs for people to take at their discretion as they passed me. On the 8th anniversary when I did that, it was surrounded by very, very talkative, rambunctious protesters. So I wasn't able to hand out very many at all. On the 9th anniversary, however, something really special happened. I got there with 100 DVDs early in the day, and I just held them up in front of my face, the same as I had before. Only this time, everybody took them, and they thanked me for it. At Wall Street on September 11th, they were happy and appreciative that someone took the risk to offer the truth in a non-confrontational way that they didn't feel compromised by approaching, that they could then take off and view in the comfort of their own home. A lot of what we're facing right now is the social constraints of what we feel comfortable discussing and whether we feel comfortable even being seen by our friends entering into these sorts of things. So what that means is that people are very receptive to the truth. They're just not receptive to it in the wrong way. It's a particular note that we need to hit. And so the episode that I've been trying to create is something that is an emotional catharsis, because grief is fundamentally and foundationally something that human beings are meant to share. If you are grieving, it is someone else's responsibility to help you with that grief. We have been conditioned as a society not to see that way. And because of that, we are tearing ourselves apart and we are tearing each other apart because, I don't know the saying, it's like many hands make for a light load. It's the same deal with grief. And so everybody is grieving right now. I'm going to individually go out there in a playful, non-confrontative way, wherein I give them the option to be able to engage. And then when they enter into my show, which is Conspiracy Synergy, you can go check it out, conspiracysynergy.com. The episode that I just completed is designed to be almost like a takeoff trajectory from mainstream controversy all the way into the depth of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and beyond. And the way in which that I can hypothetically and theoretically get people to go from something where they don't know anything about any of this to being like, holy shit, that's what they're talking about like 30 years down the line, is by, let's say, reverse engineering the emotional framework by which people come to engage with one another outside of the sphere of the dialogue that they're having, but rather the shields that they hold up to keep themselves safe from entering into taking any of this shit actually seriously. And so it's like a pragmatic formula that I have tried to figure out how the fuck can you even have a conversation with someone right now? And a lot of the time you can't. But if they had a red pill that was delivered by a fucking dude walking around in a giant goddamn rabbit costume, well, maybe that's just weird enough where they'd be willing to give it a look. So it's that kind of thing that I'm up to right now.
Well, I love your show because you do it with humor, you know, and it's unconfrontational, and you just kind of share, you know, research, and you go down these rabbit holes, which is why you'll be dressed up as a rabbit. And
where's the rabbit gonna be?
Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm in Edmonton, which is in Canada. I have dual citizenship, so I was born in the States, but I'm going to be walking around this city, and I'm charting out it geographically so that I'll have different pockets of the city that I can go about seeding it. And just the hope is to see just the occasional Twitter feed come up of someone, there's a freaking rabbit walking around just delivering these things to mailboxes. And that doesn't have to happen. Even if only a handful of people are able to actually get exposure, that's a really big deal. Because like people who don't know anything about this, there's no way for them to get exposure. They're all in echo chambers. Nobody's in the real world anymore. So fuck that. I'm going to go and do it. And that's what I'm doing right now to start the whole marketing thing, which is really more just a desperate plea for people to come together and share their grief. That's what this is, you know?
Well, I went to there's a Hartford protest that happened that Brian Festa from the CT Freedom Alliance asked me to go down there and just go down there, and he wanted me to speak and whatever. But a mutual friend of Richard Groves and mine, Colin, he was down there and he was dressed up as Santa. And it was hilarious because everybody wanted to go talk. He literally looked just like Santa, and everybody wanted to go talk to Santa. And when he was having discussions with people, like, it's amazing how you can't feel threatened by Santa. So it's like, it was so much easier to like not take it seriously. Dave can attest to this. When we go out on Halloween, you know, we would always like dress up and go out on a Halloween. And there's something about like wearing something silly that people are just more open to not take things too seriously. You know, they're more open to like talking to strangers. They're more open to like laughing and you know, meeting new people or whatever it is, or dancing on the dance floor, you know, because it's like, you know, I don't have to sit here and pretend I'm cool. I'm wearing this silly outfit, you know, so who cares? I'll go on the dance floor, you know. So people who are a little bit more shy or timid, they're more open because of that whole costume thing. So I think there is something about that whole costume thing that it's like, okay, I don't have to take this seriously. I don't have to feel threatened. It's silly. So, you know, it kind of makes it easier.
Well, I completely agree with that. I'm actually, because you're completely right. I want to add to that the notion of how important play is for people, not for kids, for all human beings. The idea of being playful about something like this can, in and of itself, philosophically jujitsu even the most skeptical and hard-hearted of person. And to give you an appropriate representation in nature for that, you can look at like a husky approaching a starving a polar bear who has them fixed in a predatory gaze. And that basically means this polar bear is going to eat this fucking husky. It's going to happen. But the husky walks up to it, wagging its tail, and it changes the way in which the polar bear is thinking, and they start playing together. That's the pivotal note through the humor that I'm trying to strike, not stroke, to be able to do exactly what you're talking about with that costume thing. Just be playful, because you're so right. People lose that if you approach them in a way where you don't inflame it, you know?
Yeah, I had the professor of psychology from Notre Dame on my show some years ago, and I remember talking about that, about how with parents now, like there's all these milestones that we have to hit constantly over and over again, like hit this milestone, hit that milestone, and we're always stressing about like, oh, they're not holding a pencil correctly, or they're not doing this, they're not doing that, and it's like we have these very just strict guidelines on what we consider a kid progressing. And she's like, you know what, kids learn from just playing, like just playing, they're learning things. And it's funny, so when my son started going to preschool, I remember the teacher being like, oh, he's so good with numbers, and wow, he knows so many large numbers. I'm like, that's because we play a lot of FIFA and we watch a lot of sports, and we, he's a big soccer fan. So he'll ask like, hey, my favorite player, like what number is he? He's 18. Okay, I'll remember that number, 18. And he starts relating it. And it's just like, so it wasn't from me like sitting down and like force feeding him math. It was literally from us just enjoying life and pursuing things he enjoys. And he was taking in information unknowingly. So I think in many cases that happens, it's like we don't have to make learning not fun. I mean, that was my problem. I barely graduated high school. I always considered myself kind of an idiot because the school system told me I was an idiot. They even sent me to vocational school because they're like, oh, you're not, these books things, this isn't for you. Go do some hands-on stuff, because that's what you'll be better at. And then when I left school, and really when I was doing the whole like just full-time job thing, and especially documentaries, then podcasts, all these things that were sparking thought and making me look at things from different perspectives and helping me explore different ideas. I'm like, wait, why am I enjoying this? I'm like, I'm not supposed to be enjoying learning. Like I thought I wasn't supposed to, and I realized, oh, okay, it wasn't that I didn't like learning. It was just I didn't like the method of learning they were trying to force feed me. I didn't like the way they were teaching me things, or they were just telling me to memorize things or learn this without any real understanding or explanation to why it's important, so so yeah, absolutely, just to kind of back what you were saying. But who am I missing here? So Nancy, of course. Nancy, you're still podcasting and obviously helping people.
Yeah, well, I'm like in episode 38 or something, but my thing is total wellness empowerment, because I'm always trying to make a person become their best health advocate for total wellness. And they have to realize that the body and the mind go together. So if they have heartaches or anger, it's going to go in their lungs, it's going to go somewhere in their body. And that we have bi-directional pathways through our biomedical, and that goes into our mental health as well. So I talk about different topics, and every once in a while I get some guest on. It's a lot of work to get guests on. So I give you a lot of credit, Ricky. There's a lot of work behind that from beginning to end. So
it is. And then Dave hosts a show saying, well, what's your show, Dave? It's I Hate Being a Co-Host.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I appear every 300 episodes. Actually, I think I did 100, now 300. Maybe I'll come back for 500.
No, 400.
Oh, all right, Nancy, I'll do 400 because Nancy's making me do 400.
And you're on record now, so you have to be true to that. But thank you, everybody, for joining me. I truly appreciate everybody who's taking time to chat, hang out, and celebrate the 300th episode. It really is just, it's without listeners, without guests that are willing to come on, and without Dave, who was willing to do this initially with me, the show would never have gotten to 300. So it's word of mouth goes a long way. I mean, so many people, who listen to the show and tell their friends about it, and everybody's helping spread these conversations. And that's why I've always stayed true to the show being open source, spread it, put it where you want. I think the conversations are more important than me getting the clicks or getting the traffic. So, you know, I just like any other show, the 300th episode, I'm sure I will take a lot away from this, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Thank you.
Congratulations, Rick. Congratulations.
You're amazing.
Yeah, thanks, Ricky. You're the best, man.
See ya. Take care.
See ya.
Congratulations. Bye, everyone. Nice to meet everyone.
You too.
Thanks, Matt. Take care. Ronnie, thanks for staying up, bud.